The title card displays for the series Evil Queenmaker. A strategy game involves raising a young Demon King tutor. High ratings and detailed settings once defined the game's success. A player reflects on their past adoration for the simulation title. He spent his time defending the game against online community haters. Sudden fury erupts as the game's quality takes a nosedive. Within a year, the developers released a controversial new DLC. Disgusting, illogical endings like NTR leave the player absolutely livid. Ratings crash as the former fanboy posts harsh, scathing reviews. User KDH1336 types furiously about the ruined character endings. Surprisingly, the silent developers finally post a direct online reply. They challenge the player to create a better ending himself. A blinding light suddenly erupts from his computer monitor screen. The man falls through a chaotic, energy-filled void in silence. Tumbled upside down, he questions where he has been transported. A massive red eye watches him plummet into the unknown. He spots a swirling portal containing a terrifying, shadowy figure. An oppressive, dark energy fills the transition between worlds. Confusion reigns as a voice calls out into the darkness. Glitchy, garbled speech appears before a mysterious and shadowy face. Overwhelming shock is expressed as the surroundings shift once more. A dark, heavy atmosphere settles over the changing scene's transition. Waking with a headache, he sees a blurry mansion gate. His vision clears, revealing the imposing black gates of an estate. Deep confusion takes hold as he assesses his new surroundings. The black-haired man stands stunned before a magnificent white castle. Touching the cold metal gate, he feels an eerie familiarity. He identifies the crest on the flag from the game. Reality sets in as he realizes the magnitude of his situation. He panics upon realizing he has transmigrated into the game. An elderly man addresses him as Nahen, leaving him confused. Nahen stares blankly, unable to process his new identity. He recognizes the elderly man as the game character Cain. Cain formally welcomes the man he believes is the new tutor. Cain bows, expressing deep gratitude to the Demon King's tutor. Naden recalls the developer's challenge to forge a better ending. Elsewhere, a young girl asks her maid for an appearance check. A reflection shows a white-haired girl and a pink-haired maid. Clutching a teddy bear, the girl admits she feels awkward. Cecily, the maid, is overwhelmed by the girl's extreme cuteness. The maid reassures the girl that her tutor is arriving soon. The girl's eyes sparkle with joy at the sight of pudding. She thanks Cecily, who finds the young majesty absolutely adorable. Cain knocks on the door, addressing the girl as Lady Seer. The butler informs the lady that her new tutor is ready. Lady Seer agrees to meet the tutor in the audience chamber. Cain is moved by the girl's suddenly dignified and regal presence. Seer sits regally on her throne, looking like a true ruler. The tutor enters the chamber as the two parties finally meet. Nafin formally greets Lady Seer while she sits regally upon her throne. The black-haired man walks forward while reflecting on Seer von Devada's identity. A decorative nameplate identifies the young, white-haired girl as Seer von Devada. Narration explains Seer is the last relative of the former Demon King. The previous ruler, Seer von Devada, died during a crushing military defeat. Seer ascended to the Demon King's throne at only 5 years old. A white teddy bear falls through a dark, star-filled emotional void. A shadowy threat puts the young Demon King's royal position in jeopardy. The young girl excitedly runs toward Nahan, who watches her with surprise. Seer greets her new tutor, and he awkwardly returns the formal greeting. Cain observes Seer's bright expression as she clutches her white teddy bear. Nahen reaches out and gently pats the young girl's long white hair. Nahen promises to turn Seer into the supreme ruler of the realm. Seer joyfully accepts her new teacher while hugging her favorite stuffed toy. Nahen exits the audience chamber and closes the heavy, ornate wooden doors. Nahen collapses to his knees and screams in sudden, overwhelming internal panic. He questions his sanity for impulsively agreeing to become the girl's tutor. Nahen reflects on his encyclopedic knowledge of the game's many secret endings. He realizes that raising a child is harder than playing a video game. He wonders if momentum or the thrill of the meeting moved him. The man continues to ponder the reasons behind his sudden, impulsive decision. He concludes that he understands the young girl's hidden pain all too well. Nahen experiences a sudden vision of demonic energy and various monsters. A sharp visual effect marks a shift in his magical perception. He discovers his current body originally belonged to a powerful great demon. Nahen begins to realize the immense potential of his new demonic status. He looks at his hand, considering his combined knowledge and demonic strength. With a dark aura, Nahen gains confidence in his ability to succeed. A confident smirk appears on his face as he faces the future. Chibi Nahen wonders why he cannot remember the great demon's true name. Seer questions the outdoor setting, but Nahan explains his preference for space. Nahen argues that an open area is far better for their lessons. Nahen knows the outdoor location provides a secret stat bonus for concentration. Nahen asks about the teddy bear, and Seer introduces Whitey as her friend. Seer sadly explains that the teddy bear has no other friends but her. Nahen decides to learn the doll's backstory slowly while Cain watches them. He introduces himself to the teddy bear to earn the girl's trust. The tutor politely shakes the paw of the girl's white teddy bear. A beaming Seer claims that Whitey understands and is ready for class. Nahen begins a lesson on mana operation, overriding Cain's traditional royal curriculum. He dismisses Cain's rigidity, causing the butler some comical, sweating embarrassment. Nahen outlines a rigorous plan involving martial arts and practical imperial studies. Seer confidently asserts that she has already mastered all of her imperial studies. Nahen argues her use of honorifics proves she lacks practical ruler knowledge. A glowing magical scroll appears as Nahen prepares a new type of lesson. He presents a training journal to help her practice proper royal conduct. Nahen motivates Seer by promising her a pudding reward for completing homework. Nahen explains the difference between innate mana hearts and active usable mana. Seer looks confused when asked to define the criteria for usable mana. Nahen explains that demons and dragons possess specialized power circuits within their bodies. Seer excitedly confirms that mana circuits are what allow them to use their powers. Nahen defines mana circuits as the concept of passageways through which mana flows. Seer correctly deduces that her usable mana is determined by her amount of circuits. Nahen realizes that sincere praise effectively motivates the young girl to work much harder. He explains that while innate mana is fixed, effort can increase the number of circuits. Nahen demonstrates a massive burst of energy to show Seer her potential mana capacity. Seer is amazed by the power, while Cain grows increasingly suspicious of the tutor. The butler notes that Nahen possesses the high-level skills of an elite demon lord. Nahen encourages the determined girl, promising she can master this immense power with practice. Inspired by the lesson, Seer resolves to work hard while sitting at her desk. News of a new royal tutor for the weakest demon king spreads through the realm. Rank 70 Demon King Andromalius dismisses the news of the queen's tutor as trivial. Demon Kings Dantalion and Decarabia discuss the potential financial and political shifts in the realm. The news of the tutor is deemed irrelevant by some, but sparks interest in others. A pink-haired demon woman relaxes in a bath surrounded by thorny purple vines and butterflies. An investigator informs the bathing woman that Nahen's history and identity remain a total mystery. The mysterious woman finds the lack of information on the new tutor to be intriguing. She decides to prepare for a public outing for the first time in many years. With a cunning gaze, the red-eyed woman prepares to investigate the new royal tutor personally. A dark-haired man stands amidst shadows, marking a transition in the story's focus. Seer walks through the hallway, determined to complete her difficult new royal training journal. The pink-haired maid Cecily greets the young queen and asks about her sudden arrival. Seer ignores the greeting to focus on the homework assigned by her new teacher. The young girl awkwardly stumbles over her words while calling out to the confused maid. Seer brandishes the training scroll and commands the maid to begin cleaning the room immediately. A stunned Cecily stares blankly at the uncharacteristically assertive behavior of her young mistress. The maid begins cleaning with magic, while Seer diligently watches and checks her training journal. Cecily notices the scroll Seer is holding and realizes it is a specialized training journal. The maid understands that Nahen is forcing Seer to give orders to build her authority. Cecily respectfully bows and agrees to follow the young queen's first official royal orders. Seer looks delighted and relieved after successfully commanding her maid for the first time. The young girl happily runs off to class while Cecily admires her extreme cuteness. Seer hums to herself while walking through the garden to meet her teacher outdoors. She finds Nahen and Cain waiting for her and calls out to them excitedly. Seer reports finishing her homework, and a proud Nahen offers her a reward for it. Nahen suggests getting a new stuffed animal friend for Whitey as a reward for her. Seer's excitement is dampened when she notices the butler's grim and worried facial expression. The young girl's joyful expression fades into a look of quiet, sudden realization and hesitation. Seer sadly declines the reward to avoid causing any financial trouble for the struggling castle. Nahen reflects on the castle's dire finances, realizing the girl is being mindful of money. He offers to take over the financial management from Cain until Seer can manage them. A shocked Seer asks her teacher if he is truly capable of handling the finances. Cain is stunned that the royal tutor already discovered the castle's secret financial situation. Nahen stands firm as the atmosphere between the two men becomes tense and serious. He asks the butler if he truly wants the queen to reach her full potential. Seer admits she wants the reward, but remains worried about the castle's lack of money. Cain admits he knows what Nahen is worried about, but claims he ignores the money. Nahen explains he isn't calling Cain incompetent, just that they have different professional strengths. Nahen confidently vows that Seer will eventually stand at the pinnacle of all demon lords. Seer looks up at Nahen and grabs his cloak while calling out to her teacher. Seer looks up at Nahen and promises her full trust. The young girl joyfully confirms her commitment. "I'm just a language model and can't help with that." Nahen internally asks Seer to trust his unconventional teaching methods. He smirks, anticipating massive wealth once his student becomes powerful. Nahen invites Siri to begin her first training session outdoors. Seer concentrates on manipulating her internal mana heart during training. Nahen observes her immense power, noting it far exceeds her rank. The young queen sweats as she pushes her mana to its limits. Nahen claps his hands to signal the end of the lesson. Seer collapses from exhaustion, prompting Cain to worry about her stamina. Nahen praises Seer's effort while gently patting her damp white hair. A transition marks a brief passage of time before the next scene. Seer runs through the garden with Whitey clutched to her chest. Nahen asks Cain why Seer is so obsessed with the teddy bear. Cain explains the toy was a birthday gift from her father. Nahen reflects on the plot significance of a previous ruler's death. He resolves to reveal the truth so Seer can take revenge eventually. Eldon rushes toward the group to deliver an urgent message. The servant announces the arrival of a letter from the 71st floor. A caption identifies the horned, blonde demon servant as Eldon. Eldon expresses fear regarding potential sudden demands from the higher floor. Cain takes the letter while Nahen notes the butler's visible anxiety. Narration explains that floor differences represent massive gaps in demonic power. Nayan smirks, claiming this conflict is exactly what he has been awaiting. Time skips forward several days to the arrival of the visitors. Nahen tells Cain to remain calm as a horse-drawn carriage arrives. Nahen notices the coachman is a highly skilled and dangerous individual. The coachman feigns humility, while Nahen questions his mere servant status. Nahan identifies the coachman's true identity as the powerful sage Baphomet. The castle staff is shocked that Nahen addressed the visitors so boldly. Baphomet drops his act, amused that the tutor saw through him. A blonde woman in an elegant black dress exits the carriage. The demon servants are visibly flustered by the woman's seductive presence. Nahen bows politely to greet the high-ranking visitor for the first time. The woman comments that no ordinary man could be Seer's tutor. Cain is appalled by Nahen's perceived arrogance toward the high-ranking guest. Nahen asks for her business, refusing to let her inside immediately. Citri is stunned when Nahen demands a valid reason for her visit. He lectures her on territorial laws despite her higher demonic rank. Citri clenches her teeth, furious at being treated like a commoner. She claims her visit is to discuss official matters between rulers. Nahen acknowledges Citri's cleverness in asserting her rank during their meeting. Nahen apologizes and instructs Cain to lead her to the drawing room. Citri orders Baphomet to remain outside while she handles the meeting. Walking through the halls, Citri notes the castle's severe servant shortage. She attributes the lack of staff to the castle's poor financial state. Citri asks when Seer will arrive while making herself comfortable. Nahen reflects on Citri's cleverness in her choice of address and title. Citri mentions financial matters while Nahen suspects she is attempting seduction. Citri believes Nahen is a simple pushover who is captivated by her. Human adventurers' invasion caused heavy casualties among the 72nd floor's defenders. A pair of hands trembles visibly while holding a cup of tea. Nahen questions the troop deployment while Citri claims her actions were benevolent. Nahen insults the high-ranking demon guest by calling her a petty thug. The brown-haired tutor offers a confident and knowing smirk to his guest. Wisps of purple smoke drift across a dark and hazy background. Stunned by the tutor's insolence, Citri questions if she actually misheard him. Nahen continues to sip his tea calmly, despite the mounting pressure. Outraged, Citri slams her hand down and demands respect for her rank. Vibrant red energy surges upward in a display of raw demonic power. A chaotic, scribbled bubble emphasizes the claim that Nahen has lost his mind. Citri releases her aura, causing the floor to shatter under her feet. Nahen mocks her anger, while the coachman Baphomet trembles in fear nearby. Nahen exposes Citri's scheme of extorting money and troops from weaker lords. Citrus' eyes glow red with fury at the tutor's unbearable arrogance. A massive explosion of light and magic fills the room as Citri attacks. The high-ranking demon declares that Nehen has brought this divine punishment himself. Nehen sits perfectly composed while destructive energy swirls harmlessly around him. The tutor's eyes remain cold and shadowed amidst the magical explosion. Nehen prepares to snap his fingers to counter her aggressive spell. Citri is shocked when her flames are instantly extinguished by Nahen's magic. The bewildered woman stares in silence as her power completely vanishes. Nehen suggests resolving their dispute through a civil and intelligent conversation. He mentions a new proposal as a glowing red mechanical core appears. Citri reacts with visible shock to the mention of the white whale. Nehen asserts his dominance, stating she will have no choice but to listen. He reveals that his proposal concerns the secret seal placed upon her power. A digital notice regarding the series' translation source appears between story beats. Nehen reiterates that Citri will have no choice but to listen to him. He repeats that the discussion is regarding the seal placed upon Her Majesty. Nehen mocks her plummeted rank, while Citri furiously tells him to shut up. He mentions the scattered ceiling stones and her need to conquer upper floors. A glowing magical scroll appears as Nehen officially offers her a contract. He vows to help the high-ranking demon break her binding power seal. Citri swallows hard, visibly shaken by the tutor's impossible and tempting offer. The lavender-haired woman asks how exactly he plans on helping her. Nehen smirks enigmatically, suggesting the proof will be in the results. A massive, dark eye looms over Nahen's silhouette in a brief flashback. Nehen proudly declares himself the Demon King's master to the stunned guest. He offers a final charming smile and asks if she will sign. The contract details troop transfers, funds, and mutual safety for both parties. Narration explains that Clause 3's support was the primary reason Citri signed. Citri reviews the document and decides the gamble is worth taking. Nehen uses a small blade to draw blood for the official signature. The tutor applies his blood to the magical scroll to bind the pact. Glowing red fingerprints mark the official agreement between Citri and Nehen. The signed scroll floats in the air, radiating magic as it activates. Nehen expresses his anticipation for the partnership as the contract glows brightly. Both parties finalize the blood pact, binding their interests together officially. Seer looks up at Nehen, surprised by the successful outcome of the meeting. Citri reluctantly offers her cooperation to the young demon queen. Nehen demands Citri show proper manners, forcing her into pained submission. The blonde woman hides her frustration while agreeing to the terms. Citri addresses Seer with formal respect through grit teeth and embarrassment. Nehen prepares to explain how they will fulfill their new contract. The tutor joyfully announces that Citri will also become his student. A wide-eyed stare of disbelief signals shock at the unexpected news. Citri is outraged by the proposal, but Nehen mocks her status. Narration describes Citri's fall to the bottom of the demonic rankings. A tiny Citri throws a tantrum while Nehen smirks at her. Nehen declares that regaining her sealed power is her only option. Citri is stunned by Nahen's claim that she can become stronger. A pained, trembling fist reveals the high-ranking demon's inner struggle. Nehen recalls Citri's future role as Seer's most reliable ally. The tutor dismisses the guest, telling her to return another time. Citri furiously insists that a master should come to her instead. Seer angrily defends her master, refusing to let anyone else claim him. Resigned to the situation, Citri settles for visiting once a week. The blonde woman denies having any desire to see the tutor. Nahin smirks, confident that the future will prove his prediction correct. Narration mentions that significant challenges remain despite the successful alliance. Citrus soldiers, Zeta and Epsilon, complain about their new assignment. The lizard man Epsilon reacts with sudden fury to an unseen insult. A blue-haired man named Varuna is introduced as a vice commander. Varuna disciplines the unruly soldiers, ordering them back to their training. The vice commander notes the chaotic state of the current atmosphere. A brief exhale of frustration marks a pause in the tension. A fox-eared commander named Lin El-Laza questions their next move. Nahen observes the scene with a cold and calculating expression. Citri slams the table, demanding to know why training is delayed. Holding a sleepy seer, Nahen explains his lack of free time. Nahen asks for her help, leading Citri to sense his manipulation. The tutor notes that Citrus's desire for revenge is a powerful motivator. Nahen asks Seer to help him manage the final administrative tasks. Walking through the grounds, they encounter the smitten Commander Lin. Nahen meets with his commanders, requesting they use his name casually. Varuna expresses skepticism over the tutor's informal approach to leadership. Nahen smiles enigmatically at the challenge to his authority. A subtle smirk suggests a mutual understanding or hidden agenda. Varuna admits that unifying rival factions is a daunting task. Nayan offers to demonstrate his method for resolving the internal conflict. The soldiers look confused as the young queen approaches their ranks. The guards gossip about the queen's appearance alongside their vice commander. Nahen acknowledges Varuna's skill and exclusive loyalty to the queen. He plans to use this moment to win over the commander. Nahin formally introduces himself to the lizard soldier as Seer's master. Epsilon identifies him as the one responsible for their current separation. The large lizard man clenches his fist while staring down the tutor. Nahan justifies his actions, claiming he saved them from certain ruin. Epsilon's eye glows with intense emotion as he processes the truth. Epsilon grabs Nahin's hand, calling him a royal tutor and questioning his arrogance. Nahen calmly comments on the roughness of the lizard soldier's handshake. Nahan tightens his grip, causing Epsilon to groan in pain as the handshake is reversed. He stands over the kneeling lizard soldier, telling him to know his place. Nahen reprimands him for acting as an equal to the master of his liege. Epsilon trembles and asks if Nahen dares to insult Citrus' majesty. Nahen notes that the soldier still considers Citri his master, while Seer watches in surprise. Lifting Seer up, Nahan presents her as the true liege they must now serve. A soldier is instantly won over by the young queen's extreme cuteness. Epsilon's eye widens as he realizes something is terribly wrong with the current situation. The lizard soldier insists on his loyalty to Citri as Nahen gathers dark mana. Nahen releases an overwhelming pressure, forcing the entire group of soldiers to their knees. Varuna is shocked by the sheer mana as Nahen threatens to dispose of the disloyal dog. The tutor walks through the kneeling ranks, offering them a final chance to reconsider. He challenges them to either deny reality and perish or embrace a new future. Epsilon claims their loyalty to Citri is unshakable because they are demons. Nahin observes that such unwavering loyalty will make the soldiers very useful allies. He snaps his fingers and tells them they must take responsibility for their words. A thought bubble expresses Nahan's annoyance with the soldiers' refusal to listen. Citri approaches, demanding to know if the soldiers realize she and Seer are allies. She angrily confirms the alliance and tells her former troops to be quiet. Sitri explains they are now the symbol of the alliance between the floors. She stresses the importance of the alliance for the upcoming war, while Nahen watches. Epsilon apologizes for his disrespect, though Sitri insists she is no longer their queen. Sitri points at the soldiers and asks them to identify themselves once more. A soldier clenches his fist in a formal salute to the new arrangement. The entire battalion salutes, declaring themselves the army of Her Majesty Seer. Both Seer and the Vice Commander Varuna are stunned by the soldier's sudden shift. Nahen gives a thumbs up, satisfied that Sitri has proven herself highly useful. Clutching her teddy bear, the young queen mimics the tutor's gesture with a thumbs up. Nahen and Seer look pleased as they offer a dual thumbs up to their new ally. Sitri asks to begin their lessons, and Nahen confirms they can start immediately. Nahen pets Seer's head and asks her to wait while he conducts the lesson. Seer suddenly grabs onto Nahen's hand, surprising the tutor with her firm grip. The young queen stubbornly refuses to let go of her master's hand. Pouting and clutching her bear, Seer insists that she will not let go. Nahen wonders if this is just a child's stubbornness, but it cannot be helped. He laughs while holding Seer as Sitri grows increasingly frustrated by being ignored. Sitri screams Nahen's name, demanding he start the lesson he promised her. She looks bewildered and asks what the tutor's cryptic words are supposed to mean. Enveloped in dark mana, Nahen announces that today's lesson is about to begin. A massive explosion of shadowy energy erupts from the tutor, catching Sitri off guard. Nahen tells her she only needs to land a single hit on him during training. A message reinforces the challenge that she must hit her master just once. Sitri is outraged, questioning how such a simple-sounding task could possibly be helpful. A close-up of Nahen's smirk confirms his confidence in the effectiveness of his method. Still holding Seer, Nahen releases a terrifying aura that causes Sitri to groan in pain. Pinned to the floor by intense gravity, Sitri hears Nahen claim he is now stronger. He challenges her to break free from his mana and land that single promised hit. Struggling against the crushing pressure, Sitri realizes the nonsensical power of Nahen's mana. Narration explains that a strengthened alliance provides another source of power. Nahen taunts the groveling Sitri, questioning her potential to reclaim power. Sitri reacts with intense fury as Nahen suggests she should quit. The narration explains that Sitri must adapt to survive high-pressure realms. Nahen instructs Seer to observe the training session with close attention. The young queen looks up with large, curious blue eyes. A scream of agony echoes across the peaceful, lush green valley. The series title is displayed in stylized blue and white characters. Nahen advises Sitri against overexertion during the beautiful mountain sunset. Pinned by mana, Sitri angrily orders the tutor to be quiet. Sitri vows revenge while the tutor and queen enjoy their tea. Nahen notes that Sitri has adapted to the pressure surprisingly quickly. Seer expresses her desire to continue learning after their morning lesson. Captivated by Seer's sparkling eyes, Nahen finds her request impossible to refuse. A sharp snap of fingers signals the transition to the next exercise. Sitri looks up in confusion as the heavy mana pressure suddenly vanishes. Nahen permits a short break, allowing the exhausted blonde woman to breathe. Nahen explains the advanced method of utilizing mana scattered in the air. The tutor and the young queen consider the implications of external magic. Nahen praises Seer's insight, laughing as she raises a triumphant fist. Seer admits her lack of experience in communicating directly with raw mana. Nahen demonstrates how to befriend floating mana to enhance magical power. He illustrates how borrowing external energy allows for much stronger magical effects. Seer cheers excitedly as she prepares to try the new technique herself. The young queen reaches out with determination to grasp the surrounding energy. Shimmering tendrils of mana swirl around Seer's small, outstretched hand. Nahen guides Seer to spread her mana wide as Citri watches. Citri is stunned by the immense mana capacity of the 7-year-old queen. Seeing the child's potential, Citri vows to protect the alliance at all costs. Seer successfully gathers a shimmering spark of light within her palm. The young queen remarks on the unfamiliar sensation of the floating mana. Nahen explains how to combine her mana with the gathered external energy. He instructs her to visualize a brilliant, flaring flame within her mind. A massive, terrifying skull of fire erupts from the ignite spell. A tiny, smiling flame skull roars from the tutor's fingertip. Citri rushes forward, urgently calling for the lesson to stop. Nahen calmly asks if there is a problem with their training. Citri stares in disbelief at the manifestation of lost ancient magic. Nahen acknowledges her recognition, but refuses to explain how he knows it. He focuses back on Seer, asking if she can replicate the spell. Concentrating deeply, Seer closes her eyes to begin her magical attempt. Fiery runes glow intensely against a dark background as the spell activates. Seer successfully manifests the ancient ignite runes above her small hand. Nahen smiles warmly and praises his student for her impressive success. He explains the need for regular practice in drawing and gathering mana. Citri objects to the casual nature of his ancient magic instruction. The blonde demon queen demands that Nahen teach her the ancient magic. Nahen refuses, stating he has not built enough trust with Citri yet. He suggests that a closer relationship might lead to future lessons. Citri blushes furiously, visibly flustered by the tutor's unexpected condition. Clenching her necklace, Citri endures the pressure while claiming it is nothing for the sake of becoming stronger. The blonde demon queen looks flustered, while Seer and Nahen watch her with confused expressions. Citri argues that one must start with another's tastes to get closer, but Nahen focuses on the trust between floors. Citri panics over the misunderstanding as Nahen accepts her realization and asks for a tempting proposal next time. Clutching her white teddy bear, the young Queen Seer tilts her head and wonders what is happening. Bright sunlight shifts across the elaborate star-shaped patterns of the library's stained glass window. Nahen reflects that he must know ancient magic because he is a great demon as he reviews scrolls. He notes that the true identities of great demons were barely revealed even within the game's world. Narration explains that great demons were ancient, mysterious, and powerful beings from distant times. Nahen decides to stop wasting energy on unknowns and begins reviewing documents to solve immediate issues one by one. Looking over a document, Nahen identifies territorial expansion as the most urgent problem they currently face. Nahen leans back, ruling out the human realm and citrus domain while targeting the 70th floor. After spotting a specific detail on the map, Nahen realizes a frontal assault can be avoided for better results. Seer calls out to her teacher as she approaches the library door while he remains deep in thought. Varuna apologizes for allowing Seer to come along as the young queen excitedly rushes toward the desk. Arriving at the desk, Varuna notes she is present because Nahen requested her professional opinion. The blue-haired commander reacts with visible surprise to the news of the planned territorial expansion. Varuna warns that conquering the 70th floor is difficult because they are at a disadvantage in military strength. Nahen silently hands a new set of instructions to the shocked vice commander to read. Varuna realizes that avoiding a frontal confrontation makes the impossible expansion sound potentially successful. With a confident smirk, Nahen asks the commander for her thoughts on his current strategic card. Varuna admits the plan makes the conquest of the 70th floor sound possible without a direct confrontation. Nahen asks for her opinion again, confident that he is making a very solid move. Varuna agrees to select infiltration specialists and suggests involving the lizard soldier Sir Epsilon in the plan. Nahen looks at Seer, stating that the soldiers will finally listen to her authority now. Varuna notes that forming a legion should help suppress minor conflicts and dissatisfaction among the ranks. The commander questions why a legion would make the incorporated soldiers loyal specifically to Seer. Nahen explains that soldiers will view Seer positively once they realize the Legion was created for their sake. When asked for her opinion, Seer beams and declares that she likes everything about the plan. The title of the series is displayed in glowing blue and white stylized characters. Citri suddenly interjects, vowing to help expand their influence into the 70th floor with intense determination. Nahen expresses zero trust in Citri, noting the difficulty gap between the floors mentioned in the game. During a break in the garden, Nahen asks Seer where she is going as she hops away. The young queen joins the exhausted Citri on the ground, mimicking her crawling training position. Nahen laughs behind his hand, joking that training is less tiring when the two do it together. Citri looks up in confusion as she realizes the young girl has joined her on the dirt. Panting from exertion, Citri thinks to herself that dealing with someone as pure as Seer is exhausting. Nahen approaches, warning Seer that her white teddy bear, Whitey, is going to get dirty at this rate. He comforts Seer, suggesting they can all bathe together with the stuffed bear after the lesson ends. Nahen asks Cain to look after the queen while the butler acknowledges the command with a nod. Citri remarks that Nahen seems used to dealing with children, but he clarifies his approach. Nahen explains that he simply focuses on helping Seer accept situations comfortably, so she can act accordingly. A text bubble poses a question about whether Citri usually acts without any thought. Citri reacts with predictable fury to the tutor's insulting assumption, demanding to know when she acted so. Snapping his fingers, Nahen pauses the training to resume their earlier strategic discussion. Stretching her arms, Citri notes that Nahen would never believe her even if she called them allies. Citri admits she was preparing for war, though Nahen wonders if his actions moved the timeline forward. The blonde demon queen crosses her arms and asks what Nahen wants her to do specifically. Citri complains that the current arrangement would cause her side to take way too much of a loss. Nahen claps his hands in praise, but Citri wonders why it does not feel like a compliment. Citri questions the risk of being used as bait for the strategy. Nahen's a document to Citri for her immediate review. Citri reviews the report concerning a fallout between influential floor powers. Citri notes the tactical opportunity presented by her rival's foolish pride. Nahen declares his plan to recruit a powerful new military faction. Citri realizes the identity of the specialized agent leading the mission. The blonde queen expresses surprise at the tutor's uncharacteristic lack of greed. Nahen smiles, emphasizing the value of maintaining their current alliance. He leaves the decision to believe him up to the skeptical queen. Training resumes as Citri is crushed by a sudden, massive mana flare. Nahen cheerfully restarts the session as the queen struggles in agony. Seer runs toward her teacher, followed closely by the loyal butler. Nahen picks up the young queen, noticing her clean stuffed bear. He notices new red streaks appearing in Seer's white hair. Kane explains the ancient clan's ability to store external energy visually. Nahen realizes the child is naturally absorbing the mana from their lesson. The butler recounts how the previous king's hair changed similarly. Nahen recognizes that Seer can now wield incredibly high-consumption magic. He encourages his student to continue mastering her unique mana gathering. Nahen shifts his focus, inquiring about the commander's current location. A dark, heavy atmosphere settles as the scene transitions away. The mission shifts to the moonlit rooftops of the 70th floor. The blue-haired commander leads her specialized team through the sleeping town. She marvels at Nahan's accurate assessment of the local military strength. The shadows jump through the night air toward their primary target. The infiltration team lands silently outside a secluded woodland building. The group surrounds a small cabin, preparing for a potential encounter. A scout confirms that the target location shows no immediate threats. The commander explains the strategic importance of winning over the raiders. The team acknowledges the difficulty, but prepares to execute their orders. A final signal marks the beginning of the infiltration attempt. The team moves in as a warning voice echoes from within. A soldier is startled as they are suddenly intercepted by hidden guards. Tension peaks as the cabin stands quiet under the full moon. Two powerful guards confront the intruders at the cabin's threshold. The guards challenge the team's identity and acknowledge their obvious skill. A large, horned man steps into the light to address the envoys. The leader of the raiders demands to know who represents the queen. The blue-haired woman reveals herself as the group's high-ranking leader. The raider is shocked to recognize the legendary hero Lin El Laza. She dismisses her former title, stating she has moved on. Lin El Laza formally declares her new absolute loyalty to Ciri. The raiders are stunned by the bold plan to conquer their floor. Aaron Raiders questions the envoy's confidence against their superior military might. A secret offering is revealed, forcing the raider to reconsider his stance. Aaron argues that combined armies still cannot match his floor strength. The envoy prepares to play her most intimidating strategic card. She claims they possess an ally of unimaginable, untouchable power. A surge of oppressive, dark energy punctuates her terrifying reveal. Aaron is left visibly shaken by the weight of the commander's words. Aaron laughs nervously at Commander Lin's proposal, but the blue-haired woman sternly asks if she looks like she is joking. Aaron argues that a truly powerful ally wouldn't need his help, but Lin explains they must avoid drawing attention from the upper floors. Commander Lin warns the Count that he will not escape the consequences of his choices. The bearded man wonders if he is being tested, recalling the true strength of the legendary Four Swords. Aaron asks for her demands, and Lin requests safe passage for the 71st Floor Army and help restraining Andromalius. Commander Lin offers the Count a chance to trade his failing alliances for a sturdy new one. A notification confirms that the strategic negotiations have concluded successfully. Back at the castle, Nahen praises Lin's success, while she credits his advance warning for the easy resolution. Nahen tells the commander to rest before their upcoming deployment, and she acknowledges the order. Noticing her hesitation, Nahen asks the commander if she has something on her mind. Commander Lin asks Nahen why he volunteered for the seemingly insignificant role of a royal tutor. Nahen argues that teaching a sovereign is important, while Lin notes it is beneath his vast abilities. Lin questions why someone as powerful as Nahen would logically choose the lowest floor of the realm. Nahen acknowledges the possibility of usurpation being a valid concern for his sudden appearance. Nahen reflects that telling her the truth would sound crazy, and a simple excuse won't work. With a wide smirk, Nahen claims he did it because he thought it would be fun. Nahen describes the joy of raising the weakest demon king, leaving Commander Lin completely bewildered. The tutor looks ominous as he describes the thrill of seeing Seer eventually rule the entire demon realm. Lin questions if this is all for his amusement, though Nahan finds her harsh wording hurtful. Nahan laughs, declaring that Seer is the absolute cutest demon king of all. Portraits appear of Cain, the loyal tactician, and Leah, the warm-hearted maid managing internal affairs. Nahen highlights Cecilia's perceptiveness and Mark's unmatched culinary skills in the demon realm. He admits Vice Commander Baruna is rebellious, but acknowledges his undeniable skill and loyalty. Commander Lin blushes furiously as Nahen compliments her strength, loyalty, and beauty. Nahen insists he is only stating facts, while the flustered commander struggles to respond. Nahen reflects on his love for the floor and its people, secretly enjoying meeting game characters. The tutor vows to never turn his back on them unless they cast him out first. Lin thanks him for his honesty, but Nahan clarifies her true loyalty belongs to Seer. Nahan smiles, assuring Lin that her questioning proved her deep concern for the young sovereign. Nahen accepts her gratitude and encourages her to get some well-deserved rest. As she leaves, Lin reflects on how blessed Her Majesty is to have good people around her. Nahen is surprised by Seer's early arrival at the star-shaped window of the library. Seer asks to watch Nahen work on the castle's finances, and he happily agrees. Nahen presents a petition regarding crop damage and asks the young ruler for a suggested solution. Seer suggests selling surplus grain cheaply rather than a free handout, surprising the tutor. Nahen asks what to do if the farmers have no money, causing Seer to think deeply. A text bubble introduces the concept of the grain loan system for managing food shortages. Seer curiously asks about the system while beginning to write notes at the desk. Nahen illustrates how farmers borrow food at low interest and pay it back after the next harvest. Seer beams, realizing the system prevents losses while helping the subjects survive the shortage. A knock at the library door signals an interruption for Lord Nahen. Leah apologizes for the intrusion, announcing that it is time for His Majesty's snack. Seer's eyes sparkle with excitement at the mention of pudding as Nahen dismisses the lesson. Leah mentions strawberry cake is on the menu, making Seer cheer happily. Seer stops suddenly, causing Leah to ask if anything is wrong. A radiant smile spreads across the young ruler's face as a decision is made. Leah is shocked when His Majesty asks to share the snack with her. Nahen is stunned, noting that Seer has never shared snacks with anyone before. Nahen decides to join them for a taste of the cake Seer loves so much. As they head for tea, Nahen reflects on the significant trust he has finally earned from Seer. Cain approaches Lord Nahan to deliver a report in the hall. Cain hands Nahen a missive containing news from the 71st floor. Nahen's sharp yellow eye widens slightly as he reads the message. Nahen smirks, anticipating a sweet outcome for Seer's coming victory. A fist slams down as Citri's declaration of war is announced. King Andromalius, a powerful horned demon, receives a warning to be cautious. Andromalius dismisses the threat, mocking Citri as an idiot with sealed powers. A blonde-haired subordinate shares his deep suspicions regarding the enemy's true strategy. Count Eugene Vermilion reports rumors of an alliance between the lower floors. Eugene mentions that Citri has been spotted visiting the 72nd floor frequently. The 70th floor court reacts with shock to the collusion rumors. Andromalius laughs off the 72nd floor's strength while noting Seer's weapon. Eugene warns that the 72nd floor's royal tutor is no ordinary man. The king questions why an exceptional individual would choose a tutor's role. Eugene explains that the tutor is the one who brokered the alliance. Andromalius expresses anger that the tutor managed to manipulate Citri. Eugene proposes crushing the alliance immediately with their overwhelming military might. Eugene asks to step closer to deliver one final secret report. A secret whisper causes the king to react with visible, wide-eyed shock. Andromalius agrees to the plan to show their rivals their superior power. The king notes that Count Aaron Raiders and his faction are missing. A close-up captures the king's intense fury and glowing blue eyes. A soldier rushes into the throne room with urgent, terrible news. The king demands an explanation for the sudden, loud commotion. The soldier reports that Citrus' army is camping outside the castle. Andromalius slams the table, cursing Aaron for his perceived betrayal. Subordinates pledge their loyalty and ask for orders to attack the invaders. A bold proclamation demands death for Citri and the traitor Aaron. The 70th floor forces cheer as they prepare to march for war. King Andromalius gives the final order for all forces to depart. The king shouts for his army to eliminate the arrogant alliance. A hand finishes strapping Seer into a full suit of silver armor. Nahén comforts the armored Seer, asking her to endure the weight. The tutor promises Seer a slice of cake once they return. Nahén checks with Cain about the commander status before they deploy. Cain stands alone in the hallway, praying for their victory. Nahén and his soldiers arrive before a massive, swirling blue portal. A blue-haired soldier explains the portal leads directly to the 70th floor. Nahén mutters about the portal's low quality before leading the group. Carrying the armored queen, Nahén steps into the magical blue vortex. The blue portal remains active as the army vanishes through it. Dark figures with glowing eyes watch the castle from a rooftop. The intruders plan to punish those who left the castle unguarded. Commander Duncan of the Special Task Force Tenebris is formally identified. Duncan orders his squad to eliminate everyone left behind in the castle. 3 cloaked assassins stand poised to strike from the castle roof. A soldier on the 70th floor questions leaving their own base empty. The guard warns of a potential surprise attack by the stealth unit. Nahén smiles, confident that any surprise attack will be completely useless. An intruder is suddenly struck down as the castle's defenses activate. A cloaked intruder is blasted backward by a hidden magical trap within the castle. The masked assassin trembles in confusion at the castle's unexpected and powerful defensive measures. An intruder is dragged away by his hood as Nahén notes he never invited guests. The white-haired head butler holds a struggling intruder aloft, demanding to know their identities. Nahén explains to the blue-haired knight that some secrets simply cannot remain hidden forever. The morning sun shines over the 72nd floor castle's grand and imposing exterior. A terrified intruder screams as he is thrown through a shattered upper-story window. Leah smiles brightly from the window, reporting to the butler that her area is clear. A text bubble confirms that 2 intruders were successfully dealt with on that side. Cecilia drags more intruders while the head butler lightheartedly explains his skills are merely rusty. Mark the lizard chef carries a defeated assassin, claiming a rat snuck into his kitchen. The butler notes the staff is fine, while the captured intruder shakes in absolute terror. Gazing at the cloudy sky, Nahén reflects that the weather is perfect for war. Baruna watches Nahén, acknowledging the tutor's flawless strategy and undeniable talent as a commander. Nahén holds the armored Seer, telling the confused Baruna that he is misunderstanding their hierarchy. Nahén highlights Seer's presence, prompting the young queen to clutch her white teddy bear tightly. Baruna bows respectfully, asking Her Majesty Seer to deliver the 72nd floor army's orders. Seer requests Nahan serve as her temporary commander, and he gladly accepts her wish. Nahan orders Baruna to provide support, and the knight salutes in total, disciplined obedience. Seer asks where they are headed, and Nahan confirms they are going to see Sitri. Seer beams with pure, radiant joy at the prospect of meeting Lord Sitri again. On the 70th floor, Sitri and her tactician observe the advancing army's impressive progress. Baphomet suggests taking action against Aaron, noting the man's terrifyingly impressive and dangerous resourcefulness. Sitri forbids Baphomet from attacking Aaron, warning that any mistake would lead to their ruin. Sitri insists they play their assigned roles, collect their due, and depart without further conflict. A massive explosion rocks the distant castle, signaling that the main assault has finally begun. A notification board loudly announces that Aaron Raiders has successfully breached the enemy castle. King Andromalius seethes with rage, cursing Aaron Raiders for his blatant and miserable betrayal. The king declares that his secret weapon will ensure his rivals fall into his hands. A sharp flash of blue energy cuts through the gathering shadows of the hall. A violent blast erupts inside the throne room, scattering debris and sending guards flying. Andromalius grins wickedly at the entrance, welcoming the very traitor he was just cursing. Commander Lin leads the 71st floor vanguard into the smoke-filled Grand Hall. Andromalius' loyal horned soldiers charge forward to repel the sudden and aggressive invaders. Drawing her blade, Lin quips that the 70th floor certainly has terrible hospitality for guests. Andromalius mocks Aaron's newfound boldness before vowing to personally tear the man limb from limb. A thick cloud of dust billows as the two opposing forces finally clash. Commander Lin moves with supernatural speed, leaving a trail of light behind her charge. Lin's sword meets the king's massive stone hammer in a spark-filled explosion of force. Andromalius sneers at Lin, calling her arrogant and claiming she is easily replaced by his power. The king challenges Lin's martial prowess as they prepare for a high-stakes duel. Andromalius raises his spiked hammer high, shouting a challenge before swinging with immense power. The massive hammer smashes the floor as Lin skillfully evades the devastating downward strike. Andromalius acknowledges her legendary agility, noting she truly deserves her title as Seer's demonic sword. Without warning, the king grabs his blonde subordinate's head and brutally rips it from his shoulders. A close-up captures Commander Lin's visible shock at the king's sudden, senseless act of violence. Andromalius grins through the gore, promising that things are only just getting interesting. A monstrous hydra head bursts from the subordinate's severed neck, horrifying the elite commander. The giant snake towers over Lin while Nahan arrives, casually commenting on the great atmosphere. Sitri asks why Nahan is there, and he calmly replies he came to check on her. Sitri questions if Seer's demonic sword and Aaron will suffice for the mission. Sitri holds the armored queen, who looks confused while clutching her teddy bear. Nahan conjures a magical blue whale toy to entertain the young ruler. Nahan tells Seer to play, while she insists on accompanying him. Nahan's yellow eye widens in shock as he senses a strange presence. Nahan detects a powerful aura that should not be present right now. Nahan rushes toward the danger, fearing Commander Lin may be in trouble. War rages as soldiers engage in a chaotic battle beneath the castle. Sitri wonders if she missed the enemy's movements amidst the intense conflict. Sitri silences her subordinate, viewing the current situation as a crucial test. Sitri explains that the king is testing her loyalty to the alliance. Sitri demands that her subordinates treat Seer with the same respect. The brown-haired butler obeys while Sitri holds the queen near the railing. Seer blushes with pure happiness while holding the toy whale and bear. A gray-armored soldier is struck down, bleeding heavily as a roar echoes. The blue-haired commander reacts with horror as she is suddenly overwhelmed. Lin is violently sent flying backward by an unseen and powerful force. Lin is pinned against a wall by a large, horned, demonic soldier. The king mocks Lin's pathetic struggle as she tells him to shut up. Lin realizes the Hydra possesses power rivaling a mid to high-tier demon king. The blue-haired commander despairs as the monstrous snake prepares to swallow her. Lin closes her eyes and apologizes to Her Majesty for failing her. A loud explosion occurs as a massive force disrupts the monster's attack. The king's eye widens as he witnesses an incredible and unexpected magical power. Lin looks up in total shock at the being who saved her. The king lies defeated while someone demands to know who has arrived. Nahen stands over the fallen ruler and coldly advises him to surrender. Understood. Please provide the text you would like me to read. The king trembles, terrified by the overwhelming magical power radiating from Nahen. Nahen's presence reminds the king of the first-ranked demon king, Beelzebub. The king wonders why such a powerful being serves a pathetic faction. Nahen raises his blade, telling the defeated ruler that he talks too much. Terrified, the king attempts to bribe Nahen with money and fame. The king offers everything Nahen desires if he switches sides immediately. Andromalius frantically begs Nahen to just name his price for his service. Nahen reflects on the unreachable highest point of a demon king's power. Nahen mocks the king's level, leading Andromalius to realize he visited Devada. A sharp, glowing blade is held against the neck of the king. Nahen refuses to forgive the king for abusing power he cannot handle. The king sneers, claiming that winning is all that matters in war. Nahen delivers a final, decisive blow to finish off the Demon King. The tutor stands tall as the king's life finally comes to an end. Nahen shouts a proclamation that the war has officially come to a close. A loud command demands that Andromalius' remaining soldiers drop their weapons. Soldiers in the castle courtyard stand frozen in shock at the announcement. The remaining forces realize their lord has fallen, and panic begins to set in. Citri and Seer enjoy tea as Citri notes how quickly the battle ended. Seer cheers with excitement upon hearing her teacher's voice from the distance. Lin bows an apology, but Nahen tells her not to be discouraged. Nahen reflects on his fragmented memories and the divergence from the original game. Nahen instructs Baruna to falsely report that Citri was the one who defeated Andromalius. Nahen orders the vice commander to handle the battlefield cleanup while he checks on Seer. The blue-haired knight asks about the queen's whereabouts, and Nahen confirms she is with Citri. The knight expresses concern about Seer being alone with a demon king, but Nahen trusts their ally. The blue-haired girl with animal ears leaps forward into a brilliant white flash. A quiet moment under the tent marks the end of battle. Citri and her butler reflect on how easily the conflict concluded, while Seer listens curiously. Seer senses Nahen's approach and excitedly shouts that her teacher is coming. Nahen arrives and asks if they were having fun, receiving an enthusiastic response from Seer. Citri expresses surprise at his speed, but Nahen tells her to wait for the official report. Citri catches a heavy, blood-stained sack thrown by Nahen and asks about its contents. Nahen reveals the king's severed head and insists that Citri take the credit for the kill. Nahen explains that this grand gesture is a sign of their alliance. Nahen prepares to leave with Seer, requesting that the spoils of war be split equally. Baphomet notes that Nahan's cold and calculating smile makes him feel extremely uneasy. Loud banging noises echo throughout the castle's exterior walls and corridors. The silver-haired butler uses a hammer to repair a damaged door inside the castle. A swirling blue energy glows as Nahen and Seer approach the castle. Cain greets the returning pair, but notices that the entrance door has been broken. Cain admits to overestimating his strength, while Nahen notes they had an uninvited guest. The butler congratulates Nahon on the conquest, though the tutor remains focused on future steps. Nahen tells Cain that there is no immediate rush to begin the next phase. Nahen reveals his plan to give the 70th floor castle to Sitri, shocking the butler. Cain worries that giving away the credit and territory results in a major loss for them. Nahen confirms that he officially intends to hand over the territory to Queen Sitri. Nahen explains that they are in desperate need of resources and financial self-sufficiency. He notes that keeping a low profile while building strength is their current priority. Nahen points out that Sitri will now be the one responsible for the 70th floor. Nahen explains that Sitri needs to prove her own formidable strength to the other factions. Cain realizes that Nahen is no pushover and had this entire strategic move planned out. Nahen decides to focus on Seer's education and internal affairs for the time being. Cain acknowledges the list of administrative tasks, including identifying those who backed the fallen king. Cain asks Nahen how he was so certain they could win over Aaron Radis. Nahen thinks to himself that the situation was a predictable sub-event from the original game. Cain reflects on Nahen's extraordinary talent and concludes he is vital to the queen's future. Nahen carries Seer up the stairs as the butler respectfully acknowledges his commander's orders. Nahen explains to Seer that she must learn the duties and responsibilities of a monarch. Nahen reminds the young queen that she is the true ruler of Devata. Seer happily promises to learn everything because her teacher makes the lessons feel like fun. Nahen reflects with satisfaction that his methods are working and that Seer enjoys the process. Seer playfully struggles in Nahen's arms, shouting a protest as he tries to move her. The fox-eared maid laughs while quoting that hard work must be followed by hard rest. Seer demands that Nahen take a nap with her, pouting when he claims he isn't tired. Nahen worries she will sulk if he refuses, so he plans to sneak away after she sleeps. The green-haired maid Cecilia welcomes the pair back to their private royal chambers. Nahen asks Cecilia if she was injured during the recent chaos at the castle. Cecilia blushes while confirming to Lord Nahen that she is perfectly fine. Cecilia is deeply impressed by Nahen's mastery over the castle's defenses and combat awareness. Seer asks if Leah is safe, while Nahen tucks her into the large bed. Nahen wishes Seer sweet dreams as she cuddles her white teddy bear and prepares for sleep. Seer grumbles about wanting to sleep in her own bed as she resists Nahen's care. The black-haired man wonders if Seer seeks emotional security due to losing her father early. Nahen decides to stay by Seer's side until she eventually drifts off to sleep. Sunlight begins to bathe the peaceful and quiet houses of the castle town. Danteleon, the 69th floor Demon King, wonders if Sitri has somehow unsealed her dormant powers. Commander Leonard observes that the last of the 4 legendary swords still remains in their possession. The Demon King insists that they must proceed with thorough and extremely cautious preparations. Alvis, the 69th floor Minister of Military Affairs, listens intently to his lord's strategic concerns. Alvis asks if an alliance is intended, and Dantalion questions if there is any better choice. Dantalayan acknowledges Andromalius's superior martial prowess and fears he might be the next target. The Demon King confidently asserts that Decarabia will have no logical reason to refuse the offer. A polite knock at the door announces that the tea for Lord Nahen is finally ready. Cecilia enters the room with a tea tray and is surprised by what she sees. The green-haired maid finds Nahen and the young queen both fast asleep on the bed. Nahan and Ciri share a peaceful moment of rest together after their long, exhausting journey. Understood. Ready when you provide the text. Nahan notes the week spent dividing assets, while Citri argues she rushed back immediately. Citri reports that the territories and troops are divided, leaving only the treasure to settle. Citri requests first pick of the treasure, and Nahen agrees as long as it's fair. Nahen instructs Citri to visit weekly for training, despite her busy schedule managing new territories. Citri reminds Nahen that she is a demon king and will fulfill her promises. Nahen acknowledges to himself that completing the post-war cleanup must be his top priority now. The black-haired tutor focuses on finishing the necessary guidelines before the night finally ends. A knock sounds at the door, and Nahen invites the visitor to enter his office. Leah informs Nahen that Seer's lessons must be canceled, prompting him to ask what happened. Nahen slams his desk in shock upon learning that the young queen has fallen ill. Nahen worries if the packed schedule or the war's stress was too much for Seer. The fox-eared maid reassures Nahen that Seer only has a mild and common cold. Nahen sighs with relief, realizing that children naturally fall sick from time to time. Leah promises Seer will recover in a few days, and Nahen asks her to provide care. Nahen chides himself for forgetting that this reality isn't a game but real life. The tutor resolves to finish his work quickly so he can check on the queen. Nahen quietly enters the room and asks Seer if she is feeling okay. He gently tells the sleeping girl that he brought her favorite stuffed animal for comfort. Seer wakes up happily and shouts for her teacher when she sees the new dolls. The young ruler smiles brightly while hugging her new brown bear and dog dolls. Nahen uses magic to summon even more plushies, eventually overwhelming Seer with the toys. Seer eventually falls back asleep, muttering that there are far too many dolls around her. Nahen is puzzled to find a third doll while holding a penguin and report. The tutor watches the queen sleep and wonders what kind of dreams she is having. Nahen checks Sirius's temperature and is relieved to find her fever has finally broken. He decides to stay and work in her room to keep a close watch. Seer wakes up and asks for her teacher, while he apologizes for disturbing her. Nahen reassures Seer that he is worried about her as he pats her head affectionately. Seer asks to see the paperwork, but Nahen insists she rest so they can work tomorrow. Nahen jokes that missing pudding would be a tragedy, causing Seer to react with shock. Nahen chuckles softly and wishes the young girl sweet dreams as she rests. Kane presents an inventory report while Nahen confirms he is looking for a specific item. Nahen recalls that growth-boosting equipment is a vital necessity for character progression in the game. Nahen smiles, reflecting on a hidden piece he uncovered in the game's 40th ending. The commander instructs Kane to secure a specific item immediately. Kane receives the inventory report and confirms he will handle it. The silver-haired butler stares in shock at the contents of the document. Kane questions the markings, but Nahen defers the final decision to Citri. The inventory list describes a broken sword of unknown origin. Seer is mesmerized by the glowing crystals found in the loot. The young queen excitedly discovers crates overflowing with gold bars. Nahen identifies the item he was seeking among the treasures. Kane asks about the recovery effort as workers organize the floor warehouse. Seer offers a playful salute after receiving praise for her work. Nahan confirms that Leah brought back the exact item he requested. Nahan identifies the broken weapon as the specific item he needed. Legend says the blood-red gemstone makes the blade appear to weep. Nahan recalls the blade's growth-boosting properties from the original game. Seer asks about the overpowered sword as Nahan examines its hilt. Nahan reassures Seer that he can easily repair the broken blade. Seer wonders how the sword will change once it is fixed. Seer's eyes sparkle as she anticipates the sword's future shine. Nahan declines Leah's offer to call a blacksmith for the repairs. Nahan organizes the distribution of the inventory among the royal troops. Seer continues to admire the brilliantly glowing gems in the crate. The brown-haired tutor watches the young queen with a serious expression. Seer is startled when her teacher suddenly calls out to her. Nahan encourages Seer to take anything she desires from the treasure. Nahan reflects on royal heritage as Seer chooses a jeweled crown. Nahan invites Seer on a journey after she finishes her selection. They arrive at a deep mine to search for missing components. Nahan navigates the tunnels confidently, knowing exactly where the pieces lie. Nahan promises to find the hidden objects in the seemingly empty mine. The tutor searches through the narrow crevices of the rocky cave. Nahan focuses his search on a specific pile of fallen rocks. Nahan uncovers a glowing red shard buried within the stone walls. Nahan laughs while telling Seer the sword is not complete yet. Nahan continues forward, determined to finish his search in the mine. A powerful magical blast shatters the rocky obstructions in their path. The tutor prepares to locate the most vital piece of the sword. Nahan strikes the cavern wall, causing a massive rumbling to occur. A stone gargoyle statue guards a large, ornate stone door. Nahan picks up Seer to carry her through the mysterious entrance. The gargoyle awakens and commands the intruders to halt their progress. Seer marvels at the talking statue while Nahan explains their rarity. The stone guardian reacts with shock when Nahan tells it to silence itself. Nahan warns the creature not to interfere with the young queen's lesson. The gargoyle immediately submits and offers its service to the commander. Nahan realizes the giant gargoyle will be a useful ally. Nahan orders the guardian to wait as he leads Seer inside. A brilliant red gem glows atop a pedestal inside the chamber. Seer shouts with amazement upon seeing the hidden ritual room. Nahan prepares to begin the final assembly of the legendary weapon. The tutor places the broken sword pieces before the glowing gemstone. A brilliant flash of energy erupts from the red crystal. The black-haired tutor and young girl watch the ritual's conclusion. Nahan asks Seer for her honest opinion on the new weapon. A magnificent glowing red sword floats as Seer calls it pretty. Nahan hugs the girl, confirming the powerful sword is for her. Seer cheers happily while lifting the glowing blade into the air. A system window details the unique stats of the Sword of Blood. The sword's equip effect grants a massive 500% stat boost. The bind effect enhances the blade using absorbed mana or blood. Nahan decides it is finally time for Seer to begin training. Cain is stunned. Nahan recruited a gargoyle named Argol the Gatekeeper. Nahan clarifies that Argol will be guarding a location outside the castle. Nahan suggests Argol is ideal for deterring annoying and fragile humans. The gargoyle is deemed perfectly suited for deployment in the portal zone. The silver-haired butler nods while carefully considering the strategic placement. Argol nervously agrees to follow orders as the pair walks away. Nahan asks Cain to join him in the office for reports. A report confirms contact between the 69th and 68th floor kings. Cain warns that a massive alliance would be difficult to handle. The black-haired tutor realizes there is only one strategic path forward. Nahen plans to disrupt Dantalion's faction, despite their intelligence and power. Cain confirms Dantalion's faction relies heavily on merchant-led class advancement. Nahen ponders the outcome of destroying the merchants' established commercial trust. Cain questions how trust built over years could vanish so quickly. Nahen clarifies that his plan does not involve an overnight collapse. The tutor gazes out the window, planning a slow, deliberate ruin. Nahen explains they will covertly compete with Dantalion on the 70th floor. Cain asks if Nahen will use Citri again. Nahen calls it cooperation. Nahen promises a tempting offer to ensure Citri accepts the risk. Nahen smiles while planning a product that will drive merchants insane. The tutor vows to introduce something currently unavailable in the realm. The story title appears against a bright and ethereal white background. The scene shifts to Sodor City on the Holy Kingdom's outskirts. In a tavern, patrons discuss the rumors of missing demon guardians. Dane tells Luke they should seize this chance to hunt demons. A pink-haired girl claims to know the location of the rams. The group departs the tavern, dreaming of gaining immense future wealth. Adventurers gather near a portal, confirming the lack of demon guards. The crowd looks toward the shimmering entrance to the demon realm. A large hand stops the group, asking to join the hunt. A muscular man named Riku Balbar introduces himself and Melissa. Dane and Luke realize they are dealing with dangerous A-rank adventurers. Luke nervously agrees to the team-up, while Riku laughs loudly. The group prepares to move out toward their dangerous new objective. Riku and the nun Melissa lead the way through the portal. Adventurers argue about the necessity of surviving within the demon realm. The team advances cautiously through the rocky terrain of the realm. Riku explains the theory of the demon realm's multiple floor structure. The pink-haired girl spots a member of the target ram tribe. Riku grips his axe, eager to begin the hunt right away. Riku proposes taking the valuable horns, while Luke expresses his skepticism. A quiet warning reminds young Luke that he has a future. Melissa empowers Riku with magic, warning Luke to follow his lead. Luke realizes the A-rank duo likely planned this betrayal from the start. Riku admits he never intended to rely on Luke's group for help. A massive force suddenly knocks the young adventurers to the ground. Dane asks if an earthquake started as Luke checks on everyone's safety. Riku grows frustrated that the sudden tremors might scare away their prey. A dark portal opens as the gargoyle Argal identifies his final target. Riku and Melissa are paralyzed with horror upon seeing the demonic guardian. The sight of the gargoyle forces the realization that they must flee. Dane urges Luke to leave Riku behind so they can escape alone. Dane grows concerned when he notices Eri frozen in a state of terror. Eri stares in silent dread at the arrival of the Demon Realm's guardians. Captain Lin stands ready as her subordinate asks for her next orders. The purple-haired captain stares ahead, focused on her singular, absolute objective. Lin orders her knights to capture every adventurer in the area alive. Luke is confused to see demons taking human captives instead of killing. A dark, heavy atmosphere settles over the grim scene of the capture. Leah reports capturing hundreds of humans, while Nahan remains somewhat unsatisfied. Leah is surprised by the human hunting strategy facilitated by the gargoyle Argal. Nahan vows to do whatever is necessary to achieve his perfect ending. The tutor views humans as insects unworthy of mercy within this reality. Leah notes that removing the guards successfully lured the humans into traps. The Catgirl warns that the residents are becoming uneasy about the prisoners. Nahen ponders his next move as the capture rate begins to decline. Leah suggests using mental manipulation to handle the captured humans' growing fear. Nahen smiles while planning to make humans desire to return to them. Static energy ripples through the air as the next phase begins. In Soter City, desperate adventurers argue with guild staff about hunting orders. Patrons discuss how a AA rank adventurer is seeking higher rewards. Luke stumbles into the guild, battered and desperate after his harrowing escape. Luke announces that the missing adventurers are being held by demon guardians. The blonde boy begs for help to rescue Eri and Dane immediately. S-rank Guildmaster Adelberg Grants arrives to question Luke about the situation. Luke claims ignorance about the demon's motives, while Adelberg remains highly suspicious. Adelberg admits he has deep doubts regarding how a C-rank survived. The Guildmaster stares intently, questioning how Luke could have escaped alone. Adelberg listens to Luke's heartbeat, which he claims sounds like a liar's. The Master notes that Luke's heartbeat calmed down with suspicious artificial precision. A foul, demonic odor begins to permeate the room during the interrogation. Adelberg accuses Luke of being under demonic control, while Luke laughs maniacally. The blonde boy draws a blade with a wild and crazed expression. A sudden, violent strike ends the confrontation in a burst of light. Adelberg swiftly neutralizes the threat posed by the mentally manipulated adventurer. The Master orders his subordinate Angela to warn other guilds about the realm. Adelberg announces the portal's closure just as a messenger rushes to him. The messenger stops breathlessly in front of the Guildmaster with news. Adelberg is visibly shaken to learn that guilds from other regions are arriving. The Northern Alliance warriors at Dorhan Fortress prepare for a massive conflict. In the Bismarck Empire, soldiers eagerly prepare to invade the demon realm. Zealots in the Holy Kingdom chant for the death of all demons. The shadow of an impending conflict looms over the human realms. Forces of light and dark begin their inevitable collision. Nahen instructs his officers to begin luring human adventurers into their trap. Baruna questions Nahen about human threats, prompting a reflection on key enemies. Nahen identifies Adelberg Grants as a target who must be delayed. Subordinates witness a swarm of humans and praise Nahen's effective strategy. Baruna and her cohort prepare to execute their portion of the plan. The lavender-haired officer orders the deployment of magic net cannons for mass capture. Confusion spreads among the invaders as the sky suddenly turns pitch black. The gargoyle Argal descends from the shadows, terrifying the human interlopers. A powerful roar from the stone guardian shakes the very battlefield. The humans realize with mounting horror that a gargoyle is attacking. Argal moves to eliminate the intruders by his master's direct command. Baruna gives the signal to fire the nets at the disorganized humans. A command echoes across the field to load the specialized weaponry. Artillery units stand ready as the vice captain signals the final attack. Huge nets made of giant spider silk are launched into the air. The glowing magical net speeds toward the target area with precision. Adventurers struggle in vain against the sticky, unbreakable spiderweb traps. A violent shockwave erupts as the Guardian's power impacts the ground. Josef Rosenbach, a veteran crusader, joins the fray with his heavy blade. The crusader blocks a massive wing as his men cry for help. Josef Rosenbach rallies his troops, intending to force a path through. Observing from above, the demon officers decide to finish clearing the area. The lavender-haired officer requests permission to handle the front line personally. A demon from the Asura tribe vows to redeem his previous defeat. A blur of speed suggests an incredibly fast and lethal movement. Shock registers on the face of the veteran crusader as he's overtaken. The Asura demon effortlessly pierces a soldier with his massive trident. The demonic warrior scoffs at the incompetence of the human pests. Radiant purple energy pulses as the demon stands over his victim. Humans flee in terror while the demon mocks their futile escape. The commander orders his troops to capture the survivors after some amusement. Fog and smoke shroud the remains of the one-sided human defeat. Nahen commends his team for their success in executing the complex plan. Nahen praises Captain Epsilon and Vice Captain Zeta for their safe return. The reptilian soldier and his companion bow respectfully to their lord. Grand doors open to reveal the inner sanctum of the castle. Nahen finds Seer enjoying pudding while a butler stands nearby. Nahen orders Cain to filter high-value prisoners and release the others. The elderly butler is baffled by the decision to release human captives. Nahen argues that they must strategically squeeze resources from the human nations. The Pope of the Holy Kingdom continues his religious duties, unaware. The Bismarck Emperor sits solemnly on his throne, presiding over his empire. The Northern Alliance's council hall remains a site of political deliberation. Nahen explains that the humans cannot afford a war right now. Seer listens as Nahen explains that the invaders must face consequences. Nahen notes that human leaders will lose public trust by refusing negotiations. Nahen explains to Seer that maintaining power and influence is vital for a demon king. Cain agrees to select 200 high-value prisoners and skilled blacksmiths per his master's orders. Seer asks about the purpose of the blacksmiths, and Nahen explains his plans to study human technology. Seer questions the marketability of human-styled products, while Nahen continues to affectionately pat her head. Emperor Claude von Bismarck expresses his outrage over receiving a ransom demand from mere demons. Imperial officials speculate that the demons' new behavior indicates a dangerous shift in their traditional simple nature. A senior official lists the heavy gold, silver, and iron demands required for the hostages' return. While some advisors suggest military retaliation, Marquise Levin Ebert insists on accepting the trade for the citizens' safety. Emperor Claude demands that Marquis Levin Ebert explain his reasoning for such a submissive stance. The official explains that the empire lacks a casus belli, since the guild acted without official sanction. Marquis Levin Ebert warns the emperor that they currently cannot gauge the demon realm's true military capabilities. The council notes with concern that many captured adventurers possess combat skills equal to imperial knights. Emperor Claude slams his fist onto the armrest, furious at being forced to bow to demons. Facing a potential public relations disaster, the emperor reluctantly orders his officials to agree to the trade. With his eyes glowing with inner power, Claude vows to avenge this national humiliation in the future. Cain reports that the major human nations have agreed to negotiate, much to Nahen's quiet satisfaction. Nahen instructs his butler to move the prisoners and deliver a final ultimatum during the upcoming exchange. The Lord declares that any remaining prisoners will be executed if negotiations are not completed within the week. A diverse group of demon residents gathers in the courtyard, confused about why they were summoned. The crowd is stunned to see Nahen walking alongside both majesties, Seer and Citri. A commanding voice welcomes the gathered artisans from every floor of the demon realm. Citri and Seer take the stage to address the assembly of confused demon craftsmen. A hand gestures toward the center of the platform to draw the crowd's attention. The leaders reveal a large collection of human bows, spears, and other weapons. The gathered artisans express shock and intense curiosity regarding the source of these high-quality items. Goblin blacksmiths examine the human swords, begrudgingly admitting that they are masterpieces of craftsmanship. Nahin informs the artisans that the displayed weapons were all taken from captured human adventurers. The prideful demon blacksmiths express disgust at the idea of admiring weapons created by humans. Citri orders the artisans to analyze the human gear and replicate it using Demon Realm techniques. A blacksmith named Doomgrick takes offense, questioning if their own craftsmanship is considered inferior. Nahin brandishes 2 swords and tells the smiths to stop wasting time on weak weaponry. Doomgrick protests the insult to his skill, but Nehen dismisses his complaints as mere stubbornness. Nehen draws a human sword to prepare for a direct comparison against a demon-made blade. The tutor challenges the blacksmiths to guess which sword will shatter upon impact. Doomgrick gulps nervously as he realizes the potential gap in quality between the 2 weapons. Nahin shatters a blade and tells the smiths to evolve their work instead of losing to humans. Motivated by the challenge, Doomgrick raises his hand and agrees to attempt the new research project. The master blacksmith warns that analysis will be slow, prompting Nehen to offer unlimited resources. Seer points out Doomgrick and suggests to Nahan that he should lead the new project. Nahan hands a badge to the blacksmith, granting him official authority over the other craftsmen. When other smiths complain about the sudden appointment, Nahan silences them with a piercing, cold glare. Nahan delivers a lecture on leadership, defining it by the courage to act and take responsibility. The blacksmiths recoil in terror as Nahan asks if they intend to defy their liege's decree. Nahan clarifies that disrespecting his chosen leader is an act of treason against the 2 sovereigns. With glowing red eyes and a dark aura, Nahen threatens immediate death to any dissenters. Overwhelmed by the oppressive pressure, Doomgrick falls to his knees in total submission. The blacksmiths bowed their heads, pledging to obey the command of their great leaders. The scene shifts momentarily as the group prepares for the next phase of their plan. Citri proudly asks if her performance during the speech was sufficient to impress Nahin. Nahen praises Seer's composure, while an ignored Citri grows visibly annoyed with him. Nahen chides Citri for seeking praise like a child, while she protests. Nahin patronizingly praises Seer for her successful performance during the earlier speech. Nahen proposes a business deal using Citri's official title as a front. Nahen rejects Citri's greedy demand for half, while Seer mocks the woman. Citri loudly protests Nahen using her name to run his whole operation. Citri desperately tries to negotiate her profit share down to 10%. Nahen uses his dark aura to pressure a flustered Citri into submission. Nahen emphasizes the superior quality of his proposed weaponry compared to human gear. Nahen dictates a low 5% cut, promising high actual returns later. Nain feigns heartbreak over Citri's persistent lack of trust in his word. Nahen assures Citri that replicating human technology is a matter of necessity. The tutor recalls successful strategies from his past gaming knowledge regarding builds. Nahen admits demon weapon research has been dangerously neglected in the past. The tutor highlights the absolute necessity of improving the army's equipment levels. Citri feels relieved as Nahen promises technological parity with humans very soon. Nahan provides a final opportunity for Citri to withdraw if she has doubts. Citri quickly backtracks, eager to acquire the promised free armaments for her forces. Citri is outraged when Nahan suddenly claims the armaments are not actually free. Nahan explains the hidden costs regarding the risk to Citri's public reputation. Citri begins to realize she has been outmaneuvered in their business deal. Nahan sinisterly reminds Citri that nothing in this world is truly free. The scene shifts to the dark, torch-lit dungeons deep within the castle. Prisoners Eri and Dane fear for their lives and their missing friend. Armed guards enter the prison cell to seize the high-value human captives. A terrified prisoner is forcibly dragged away by the guards while others watch. Dane and Eri demand to know their destination and final fate as prisoners. Nahan greets the two prisoners personally and asks for their names. Nahan inquires if the two companions know a person named Luke. The prisoners angrily demand the return of their kidnapped friend from the demons. Nahan confirms Luke's identity based on the prisoner's intense and immediate reaction. Nahan consults his butler while holding a mysterious document for the prisoners. Nahan shows the prisoners a portrait to confirm Luke's identity and origin. Dane and Eri are shocked to see their missing friend's portrait shown. Kane confirms Luke was sent towards Sodor City during a prior mission. Nahan relishes his incredible stroke of luck regarding the prisoner's high value. The brown-haired man descends the stairs into the lower levels of the castle. Nathan anticipates the eventual arrival of 3 legendary human heroes in the realm. Nahan identifies the blonde warrior, Luke, as the legendary hero of the sword. Nahan plans to exploit the predictable honor of the human realm's leadership. Nain gloats about removing a major threat without even lifting a finger. Nahan recognizes the immense hidden potential of Luke's 2 loyal companions. Nahan offers Dane and Eri a chance to serve under him directly. Kane warns about the potential political backlash of housing human servants. Nahan promises rewards and safety in exchange for the prisoner's unique skills. The royal tutor looms over the prisoners while awaiting their final answer. Nahan outlines the grim consequences of slavery if they refuse his generous offer. Dane and Eri react with absolute horror at the news of a death. Nahan denies responsibility for the death of their close friend and companion. Nahan shifts the blame for Luke's death onto a specific human guildmaster. The prisoners are left devastated and facing a life-changing choice from the tutor. Dane questions the risk of working for a demon while seeking assurance of their safety. Despite the uncertainty, the pink-haired woman decides to accept the demon's offer. Dane calls her crazy, but Eri argues that humans can be just as cruel as demons. Eri clenches her fist, recalling how their own society marginalized the poor and the weak. Driven to desperation, she tearfully vows to take any chance to survive. Eri agrees to a deal with the devil as Nahan looms over them with a sinister aura. Dane relents and joins her, asking Nahan what their first task will be. Nahan walks away, declaring that they must train to become useful to him. He warns the 2 humans that their future depends entirely on their performance. The scene shifts to the castle for Seer's highly anticipated swordsmanship lesson. Nahan plans to use his host's latent skills to teach Seer the basics. The teacher stops Seer to deliver an important instruction before they begin. Seera is heartbroken to learn she cannot bring her stuffed bear to practice. Nahan worries the lesson might be too harsh, given Seer's attachment to her father's legacy. Seer surprises Nahan by willingly setting Whitey aside to focus on her training. She promises the teddy bear she will return quickly after her lesson. Nahan demonstrates the proper grip and basic stance for holding a sword. Seer mimics his form perfectly and asks for her teacher's immediate feedback. Nahen is stunned by Seer's natural talent and flawless form with the powerful blade. He explains that mastering the swing is the essential foundation for all swordplay. Nahen raises his practice sword, instructing his young disciple to observe his technique. A powerful downward strike from the teacher sends a shockwave through the courtyard. Seer watches the display of strength with wide eyes and pure admiration. Nahen invites Seer to attempt the swing herself while he observes her progress. The young girl focuses her energy and prepares to deliver her first strike. A massive red aura erupts from Seer as she unleashes a terrifyingly powerful attack. The force of the strike creates a massive crater, leaving Nahen completely speechless. Nahen realizes the Sword of Blood Tears grants a massive 500 stat boost. Seer bashfully asks if she succeeded, while her sweating teacher offers high praise. Surveying the destruction, Nahen decides to switch to wooden swords for future practice. Seer pauses the lesson to bring up a new topic of conversation. Surrounded by a dark aura, Seer asks about the new humans in the castle. Nahen assures her that she is his only true disciple and student. He explains that his relationship with the humans is merely a necessary business transaction. Seer is overjoyed when Nahen promises to remain her exclusive teacher forever. Cain approaches the training ground to deliver a private message to Lord Naham. The butler whispers news that clearly catches the royal tutor off guard. A title card announces the upcoming celebration of the Demon King's birthday. Nahen sighs while contemplating a new problem that requires his immediate attention. Citri objects to his timing while Nahen signals for her full attention. Citri offers her help as an older sister, but Nahen quickly dismisses her. Citri asks if he fought with Seer and teases him about quitting. Nahen ignores her and focuses on choosing a gift for Seer's upcoming birthday. Citri is surprised by his sentimentality, while Nahen questions her disappointed expression. Nahen sighs and tells Citri to stop her useless speculation about his plans. Citri lists simple things Seer enjoys, including dolls, pudding, and sweet cakes. She wonders if those common treats are too simple for such a special occasion. Nahen reflects on how increasing Seer's favorability is crucial for his ultimate goal. He remembers Seer showing interest in a crown that was far too large. Citri suggests commissioning a craftsman to resize the crown for the young leader. Nahen ignores Citri's protests to focus on planning a surprise for Seer. Nahen considers sneaking a crown out of Seer's room while Citri demands attention. Nahen and Cecily sneak through the castle halls to start their secret mission. Cecily confirms Seer is distracted by pudding, allowing the surprise present operation to begin. A hand slowly and quietly turns the doorknob to Seer's private room. Seer catches Nahen off guard by suddenly running out to greet him. Seer hugs her teacher, explaining she could sense his unique mana nearby. Nahen and Cecily realize their secret plan was almost immediately discovered. Nahen quickly fabricates an excuse about wanting to take a walk together. Nahen leads Seer away while entrusting the remaining secret task to Cecily. Under the bright moonlight, Seer admires the beauty of the night sky. Nahen comforts Seer while secretly planning to resize her birthday gift. The teacher advises his young student to prioritize her health and well-being. The moon shines brightly over the castle as the night continues. Nahen promises more lessons if Seer agrees to take proper breaks. Seer happily agrees while Nahen reflects on her remarkably pure heart. From a distance, Cecily signals that the first phase is a success. Nahen visits the blacksmith's workshop to discuss a very special commission. The royal tutor requests the blacksmith to resize a crown for Seer. Nahin stresses the importance of keeping this birthday surprise a total secret. The blacksmith admits his current prototypes are not yet of sufficient quality. Nahin encourages the craftsman to focus on quality over speed for Seer. Nahin's thoughts are interrupted by the sound of Seer crying nearby. Nahin rushes back to find a devastated Seer surrounded by worried maids. Despite being offered her favorite pudding, Seer continues to sob uncontrollably. The sudden emotional outburst leaves Nahan and the staff completely bewildered. Through her tears, Seer desperately calls out for her beloved teacher's return. Petals drift through the air as Seer's sorrow fills the room. Seer clings to Nahen, her fear of abandonment finally boiling over. The maids explain that Seer feared Nahan had left the castle forever. Nahen apologizes for leaving without a word and comforts the distraught girl. But Nahen gently inquires about the specific source of Seer's intense crying. Seer tearfully confesses her deep-seated fear that Nahen would eventually leave her. Nahen listens silently as the weight of her words sinks in. Seer asks if her teacher will abandon her once she reaches her goal. Nahan struggles with his secret intention to return home after the story's end. Nahan promises to stay by her side, offering her false reassurance. Nahan uses a lie to distract Seer with the promise of pudding. Seer senses the lie and internally vows to never let him go. A dark obsession takes root as Seer demands he stay forever. Driven by fear, Seer decides to work harder to bind him to her. With a chillingly focused gaze, Seer resolves to keep him by her side. 1 week later, the castle prepares for Seer's grand birthday celebration. Nahan escorts a beautifully dressed Seer into the crowded birthday banquet hall. Seer thanks her subjects while a guard swoons over her adorable appearance. A blue-haired man presents a birthday gift on behalf of himself and the commander. Seer is delighted by the gift while the guard blushes with joy. Citri arrives in an elegant dress, criticizing the modesty of the previous gift. Citri claps her hands, drawing everyone's attention to her grand entrance. Nahen reacts with weary frustration to Citrus's predictable and dramatic interference. Citri presents the transformed Seer, while Nahen finds her outfit cute. Nahen acknowledges her appearance, though Citri questions his backhanded compliment. Seer happily thanks Citri, while the demon expresses her satisfaction. Nahen summons the blacksmith Doomgrick to present his latest work. Doomgrick hands over a box, receiving praise for his hard work. Cain reacts with total shock as Seer surrenders her beloved bear. Seer asks to open the gift, and Nahen gives his permission. Light pours from the box as Seer gasps in absolute amazement. A magnificent golden crown is placed upon the young girl's head. Seer beams in her elegant dress while wearing her new crown. A warning message regarding website support appears on a black screen. Nahen carries Seer as she confirms her happiness with the gift. Nahen observes Seer's growing hair as she accumulates more external mana. The teacher pauses as Seer asks what he has noticed. Nahen is shocked to discover a small horn growing on Seer. Nahen panics while Cain explains that demon kings naturally have horns. Cain wonders about Nahan's origins while the teacher suspects hidden settings. Seer clarifies she isn't sick, providing relief to her worried teacher. Cain warns that horns are sensitive, so Nahen vows to be careful. Nahen takes Seer to check on a newly prepared prototype blade. Doomgrick nervously presents the weapon, fearing it might be a failure. Nahen explains that failure is a learning experience that builds motivation. Nahen tells the blacksmith to stay calm as he tests the sword. The teacher draws the fine-looking blade from its white scabbard. Nahen instructs Siri to step back for the dangerous weapon test. The scene shifts to the courtyard where the demonstration will occur. A hand tightly grips the hilt of the newly forged weapon. Nahan unleashes a powerful vertical strike with the prototype sword. Red sound effects erupt from the force of the teacher's blow. Doomgrick gulps nervously while awaiting the final verdict on his work. Nahen praises the hard work that went into the sharp blade. The blacksmiths celebrate the successful test of their first finished product. Nahen expresses his high expectations for those asking for such favors. Doomgrick pledges his absolute best as Nahen pats him on the back. Seer asks if they can begin in earnest, and Nahen agrees. News of a mysterious weapon sale begins to spread through the city. A merchant reads a flyer about rare weapons in a specific stratum. Two demons discuss rumors of human weapons manufactured within the realm. The merchant decides to investigate the rumor despite its potential inaccuracy. A green-skinned demon agrees to accompany him to see the weapons. A frantic voice calls out to Sir Wayne as they arrive. The merchants realize they have entered a castle run by demons. Grand doors burst open as the visitors are welcomed inside. Nahen stands by as Seer and Citri receive the visiting merchants. The merchants realize this venture is a joint alliance between demon kings. The visitors observe the tense atmosphere within the high-security hallway. Citri guarantees the quality of their forged weapons under her name. The Green Demon is stunned by the Demon King's extreme confidence. Citri declares her intention to share information only with business partners. The Demon Queen offers an ultimatum to either deal or leave. A stern warning is issued regarding the dire consequences of backing out. Citri emphasizes her point with a lethal threat against anyone who refuses. A merchant trembles as the Demon Queen clarifies her deadly business forewarning. Sir Bennett chooses to stay despite the heavy risks involved in the deal. Bennett views the dangerous venture as a golden opportunity for royal connections. Nahen remains stoic as his predictions about the merchant group prove accurate. The dark-haired teacher steps forward, revealing himself as the strategist behind the business. Bennett is visibly shaken to realize Nahen holds the true power over the throne. Nahen offers the remaining group exclusive rights and a trade monopoly. The teacher proposes a 3-year contract with a 60-40 profit split. Nahen manipulates the numbers while Citri seethes over her tiny 5% share. Bennett calculates that even a minority share of high-grade weapons will be immensely profitable. Nahen invites the visitors to compare their demon-forged blades with human craftsmanship. The merchants are immediately awestruck by the superior quality of the presented weapons. Bennett silently inspects a sword as the room fills with murmurs of excitement. The green-skinned merchant realizes his companion was wrong to doubt the venture's caliber. Bennett expresses concern that a monthly output of 400 swords is too low. Nahen reveals that their production extends beyond simple swords to full sets of armor. A sharp snap signals a dramatic transition to the next phase of the deal. Documents are handed out detailing the full range of military equipment for trade. Bennett recognizes that providing a full arsenal will easily attract massive business. Citri regrets her small cut, but admits she couldn't have proceeded without him. Nahen prepares to unveil a second, even more secretive proposal to the merchants. Nahen recognizes Bennett as a future guildmaster from his previous game knowledge. The teacher warns that this next offer is strictly limited and entirely optional. Bennett correctly deduces that the limited quantity of this item implies high value. Nahen smirks, knowing certain buyers will do anything to obtain this new merchandise. The teacher decides that a physical demonstration will be faster than a verbal explanation. Nahen leads the group away, while Seer and Citri remain in the hall. Rhythmic footsteps echo through the dark and cold stone stairwell of the castle. The merchants grow nervous as they realize they are descending into the dungeons. Nahan explains that the new merchandise consists of captives from the lower floors. Rusty chains and shackles hang ominously against the rough, dark dungeon walls. The sound of struggle and clanking metal greets the group as they approach. The merchants are horrified to find live human prisoners locked behind the iron bars. Bennett realizes the dark nature of the second proposal involves trafficking human slaves. Nahen explains that they have already filtered and sorted the most useful captives. The teacher offers a final choice to trade or leave the dungeon area. Bennett weighs the risks of controlling humans against their high market potential. The merchant concludes that noble demand for human slaves will be incredibly lucrative. The group of merchants splits as they decide whether to accept the dark deal. Only 5 people remain to hear the details of the human trafficking operation. Nahan categorizes certain prisoners as ideal candidates for manual labor and odd jobs. He highlights other captives chosen specifically for their looks to serve as entertainment. The final group is marketed as elite escorts, on par with regular human knights. A prisoner rages against the bars, insulted by being valued by demon merchants. The captive screams in defiance, demanding death over a life of demon servitude. Nahin dismisses concerns about control, despite the prisoner's violent outbursts and rebellion. A magical seal glows on the prisoner's neck as Nahan activates a control spell. The prisoner glares with pure hatred as the magical subdual takes hold. The green-skinned demon trembles as a dark power vows total destruction. Nahan details the horrific magical constraints and brainwashing used to control the captives. With a sinister glint, the dark-haired teacher questions the merchant's next move. A promotional screen displays a serious, dark-haired youth against a purple background. Bennett explains to his fellow merchants that his inventory comes from an exclusive contract. The general store on the 69th floor showcases a variety of masterfully crafted weaponry. Bennett rejects a competitor's desperate offer, citing a strict 3-year monopoly agreement. Wayne realizes the Demon Realm market will soon face a massive, unavoidable upheaval. Bennett instructs his subordinate to leak rumors about the auction across the upper strata. The merchant anticipates that high-ranking demons will be desperate for these new items. An elderly butler delivers a letter to Nahan regarding Bennett's planned slave auction. Nahan acknowledges the merchant's cleverness, but finds merely watching the event to be insufficient. The teacher decides to bring the human children along to witness the upcoming auction. A few days later, the group arrives at Bennett's expansive and busy general store. Seer is mesmerized by the goods, while the human children whisper about her identity. Bennett welcomes his royal guests before offering to show them rare magical artifacts. The group follows the red-haired merchant down to a specialized, high-security showroom. Nahan coldly dismisses Bennett's curiosity regarding the origins of his 2 human companions. The heavy doors open to reveal a room filled with top-grade magical equipment. The human pair is breathless at the sight of such legendary and powerful items. Nahan permits the humans to choose any single item to aid in their studies. The pink-haired girl is overwhelmed with shock as she selects a glowing ring. Nahan confirms the ring is perfect for a human who cannot generate their own mana. Seer's sudden, freezing gaze of pure jealousy terrifies the pink-haired human girl. A gentle head pat from Nahan immediately restores Seer's happy and cheerful demeanor. Seer proudly chooses the brightest, most sparkling mana-storing necklace in the entire room. Nahen approves of the strong protective magic enchanted within Seer's new sparkling accessory. The teacher orders the merchant to build the 72nd floor for the chosen items. Nahen calls the group together to proceed immediately to their next destination. The group departs for the main event as the merchant follows closely behind. An auctioneer kicks off the main event by presenting human entertainment goods to the crowd. Bidding for a human slave begins at a starting price of 5 gold coins. The human children realize the public auction is a calculated, grim warning for them. Nahen commends Bennett's business acumen in maximizing profits via a public bidding system. Dane questions why the teacher keeps them instead of selling them for a high profit. Nahen compares their role to Seer's elite guards, emphasizing their specific personal utility. Seer beams with joy after Nahen asks if she can trust his future plans. The teacher asks Dane and Eri if they regret choosing to join his side. The humans watch the auction conclude, relieved to have escaped such a dark fate. Nahen welcomes their continued cooperation with a dark and satisfied grin. A surge of magical energy gathers around a child's outstretched hand during practice. Nahen observes Seer's significant improvement in mana storage as they train together. 5 years later, a grown Seer proudly displays her mature demonic horns and features. Nahen proposes moving the lesson to a different location to keep things interesting. Seer pouts about her official duties, while Nahen looks amused by her reluctant behavior. The teacher insists that Seer must not neglect her responsibilities as a demon king. Nahen notes that their exclusive multi-year trade agreement has finally reached its end. Seer asks about a renegotiation, but Nahen sees no need to accept their terms. Seer explains that their armaments are now famous enough to bypass the previous monopoly. Nahen plans to manipulate growing merchant dissatisfaction to secure even better trade conditions. Nahen agrees that it is a wise choice to move away from a monopoly, while suggesting they create differentiation to maintain their current merchant relationships. Seer thinks it is the right time to expand their slave business, prompting Nahen to note the turmoil in the human realm. Narrative text explains that the current period is a game event known as the Faction Expansion Chance, where one can ignore the human realm. As they walk toward a swirling portal, Seer recalls Nahen's original plan to destroy Dantelion's credibility. Seer realizes the foundation for subjugating the 69th floor is ready, a fact the black-haired man confirms with satisfaction. Nahen smirks, declaring it is finally time for them to begin their move in earnest. Sitting before a group of merchants, Nahen announces that their exclusive 5-year contract has provided enough benefits and will not be extended. The black-haired teacher offers a new proposal for their consideration, showing a document to the gathered group of merchants. Nahan asks the merchants to spread a specific rumor in exchange for a continuous supply of armaments and slaves. When the green-skinned merchant questions the validity of the information, Nahen darkly asks if they have lost the trust built between them. The merchant realizes that cutting off trade with the black-haired strategist would be a foolish and irrational business move. Seer questions the methods, but Nahen explains they must offer the first opportunity to those who have already built trust with them. The green-skinned merchant realizes they cannot refuse because trading with Nahan has become an essential part of their massive success. After the merchants depart, Seer observes that Dantalion is usually very careful about managing his own business affairs. Citri complains that the black-haired man should have informed her of such a major development earlier, but he tells her to visit and train more often. The blonde woman insists she can stand on her own and has a specific reason for avoiding the 72nd floor recently. Citri admits she has stayed away because of the terrifying child, referring to Cyr, before asking what their next step should be. Nahen tells her to simply live her life normally, because cracks in their enemy's foundation will soon form on their own. The scene shifts to the grand castle of the 69th floor Demon King. Demon King Dantaleon is horrified to read a report exposing his fabricated revenue and financial manipulation. Dantaleon panics, screaming in disbelief as he wonders who could have discovered his secret illegal activities. Narrative text details how Dantaleon's core weapon business took a direct hit from the high-quality goods coming from the floor above. To hide unsold inventory and maintain client trust, Dantaleon manipulated his ledgers to show a false sellout, despite taking a heavy financial loss. Dantaleon rages that the exposed information will make it look as if he is embezzling funds from the throne. A trembling subordinate informs Dantaleon that there is a far more pressing and urgent matter currently at hand. The subordinate explains that their merchants are demanding to terminate their contracts, while blacksmiths are aggressively seeking their overdue payments. Dantaleon clutches his head in a desperate frenzy, wondering where he can possibly find the money to settle his debts. Subordinates suggest liquidating the inventory to secure funds, but Dantaleon argues the financial loss from such a move would be too catastrophic. An elder demon warns Dantaleon that they must act, citing the fate of Andromalius and the threat of Citri attacking them if the army goes unpaid. Dantaleon decides his only option is to borrow funds rather than allowing their rivals to climb up and swallow them whole. From a distance, Nahen watches with a smirk, satisfied that his target is struggling exactly according to his plan. A simple white bubble expresses the black-haired man's delight at the wonderful sight of his enemy's downfall. Nahan and Cyr are shown together inside his new, expansive, and sunlight-filled office. Nahan notes that Dantaleon's move was essentially a suicidal attempt to survive in the short term. The silver-haired girl asks how her teacher was able to know about the hidden supplies stockpiled in the secret warehouse. Nahen credits the information to Dane, though he secretly recalls learning the details from his extensive knowledge of the game. Nahen asks if Ciri doubts his judgment, causing her to wave her hands frantically in a desperate denial. The silver-haired girl pouts, leading her teacher to reflect on how she still has childish moments despite how much she has grown. Nahen reassures Cyr that no matter what anyone else says, he is her teacher and she is the sole focus of his attention. Cyr blushes as she receives a head pat, asking if he is serious, while he confirms his statement with a gentle smile. The silver-haired girl reads the document and agrees that the information is perfect for stirring up conflict among their enemies. The black-haired man decides that they will need Commander Lin's assistance to carry out the next phase of their plan. Nahen welcomes Commander El Laza to the audience chamber of the 72nd floor Demon King's castle. Commander El Laza reports that an envoy from the 68th floor is approaching, which could pose a significant problem for their interests. Nahen instructs the blue-haired commander to handle the situation using a specific sword he presents to her. Lin observes that the sword is high quality and bears the crest of the 69th floor, proving it is not one of their own items. The commander realizes the depth of the scheme and acknowledges that this is almost certainly another of Nahan's complex plans. Lin vows to complete the task for the sake of Her Majesty, who she believes is finally showing the true qualities of a ruler. Cyr is thrilled by the praise and asks for a reward, while Nahan remarks that she finally looks the part of a true demon king. Nahan asks what kind of doll she would like to receive as her reward this time. The silver-haired girl is deeply offended by the offer of a doll. The teacher calls after Cyr, asking why she is suddenly so upset. The black-haired man wonders if his student has entered her puberty. At the portal zone, Commander Len and Dane discuss keeping their identities hidden. Baruna and the commander divide the targets while subordinates worry about elite monsters. The blue-haired woman prepares to frame another party for the coming assault. Sudden flashes of light signal the beginning of a swift, violent confrontation. A swirling purple portal hums with energy as the next phase begins. A group of hooded envoys emerges, unaware that Lin is watching them. The commander strikes from the shadows with a lethal and precise sword lunge. Lin orders the total annihilation of the ambushed group as they cry out. The hooded figures struggle to defend themselves against the relentless and hidden attackers. Blood spatters across the scene as the victims' last breaths are cut short. Standing over the corpses, Lin confirms their mission is complete and orders withdrawal. Dantalion is paralyzed with fear upon hearing his envoys were completely wiped out. A subordinate confirms the murders and urges immediate communication with their superior, Decarabia. The panicked Demon King screams in denial about being responsible for the slaughter. Dantalion is stunned to find his own manufactured weapons were left as evidence. An advisor warns that the evidence will be used to pressure them into submission. Dantalion rages, certain that Citri is the mastermind behind this devastating political setup. The Demon King of the 69th floor declares war and vows to destroy Citri. A soldier bursts into the throne room with a look of pure terror. The messenger reports that Decarabia's army has already crossed through the portal to invade. Dantalion realizes with horror that he is about to be completely subjugated. Advisors suspect that the entire situation was a meticulously planned invasion by their ally. Dantalion desperately orders all his forces to deploy and stop the incoming invasion. Nahen stands by the throne, noting that the two factions are clashing as planned. The black-haired man asks Seer to trust his lead for a maximum profit. Nahen explains that they will gain massive benefits with almost no physical effort. The teacher orders Commander Epsilon to prepare for deployment into the ongoing war. Nahen clarifies they will avoid a full-scale war by only harassing the rear forces. The Lizard Man commander realizes they are meant to act as a distracting force. Seer beams from her throne, telling the commander to leave the task to her. Nahen instructs Commander Lin to begin evacuating the rival floor's merchants for themselves. The teacher points out that the merchants have already lost all trust in Dantalion. Nahen smirks, knowing their new policies will lure every merchant to their side. Seer asks about Citri's approval, but Nahen knows he will accept the free money. The silver-haired girl commands her subordinates to follow her teacher's plan to the letter. Seer sits regally as her commanders acknowledge her authority with a formal salute. The commanders depart the throne room to begin the calculated move against their neighbors. Nahen notices Seer is deep in thought and asks what is on her mind. Seer suggests conquering the entire floor themselves, but Nahen rejects the dangerous proposal. The girl argues that she is strong enough because of the magic he taught. Nahen insists she must wait until she is older before stepping onto the battlefield. Seer pouts and protests that she is already a fully grown and capable leader. Nahen acknowledges that her power is already unrivaled among the lower floor kings. The teacher privately worries that losing her would render all his long-term plans worthless. Nahen asks her to endure his selfishness and continue taking a safe secondary role. Seer agrees on the condition that her teacher grants her a special personal wish. The silver-haired girl blushes happily while imagining a private trip alone with her teacher. Nahen realizes he has never taken his student anywhere and proposes a trip. Seer cheers wildly, reminding Nahen of how a child reacts to parents' plans. The teacher resolves to give the silver-haired girl more personal attention. Seer lies in bed, surrounded by stuffed bears, unable to sleep from excitement. Cuddling a teddy bear, the girl dreams of being alone with her teacher. Seer determines that she must finish the current conflict quickly to travel. The girl's eyes sharpen with a resolve to misbehave for her goal. Commander Lin is shocked when the silver-haired ruler insists on joining her. Lin acknowledges Seer's combat prowess but worries about her safety on the field. The blue-haired commander bows, wondering why Nahen left Seer behind this time. Seer demands to know which Lord Lin serves, and Lin pledges her loyalty. The silver-haired girl forces Lin to choose between her orders and Nahen's. Lin sweatily admits that the Majesty's orders must always come first. Seer triumphantly announces her deployment as the commander looks on in disbelief. Lin begs the girl to stay safe while Seer brushes off the concern. The commander tries to hold Seer to a promise she clearly ignores. Gripping her red sword, Seer walks toward the portal with a joyful smile. A technical announcement signals a shift in the ongoing narrative flow. Dantalion watches from the ramparts as Decarabia's massive army approaches his position. Commands to fire ring out as the first volley is launched. Archers on the castle walls rain arrows down upon the advancing troops. A magical orb hums with power as it prepares a devastating counterattack. Pillars of pink energy blast down from the walls, incinerating the front lines. Massive explosions tear through the battlefield as the defenders unleash their arsenal. A terrified soldier watches his allies get crushed by falling debris and magic. The attacking forces realize they are being slaughtered and cannot break the defense. A retreat is ordered as the magical barrage proves to be insurmountable. A knight in golden armor stands perfectly still amid the chaotic retreat. The golden-clad warrior watches the battlefield with cold, glowing eyes. With a swift motion, the knight cleaves through an enemy with his massive blade. A calm voice commands the retreating soldiers to stand their ground. The warrior is revealed as Balthazar, a powerful elite of Decarabia's army. Balthazar mocks Dantalion's pathetic attempts to resist the coming subjugation. Dantalion screams at his troops to keep fighting despite the legendary opponent's appearance. The Demon King curses his hired help for their cowardice and incompetence. Green-skinned hands conjure a massive emerald magic circle to invoke hellish flames. A wave of intense green fire washes over the battlefield to incinerate Balthazar. A notification appears announcing the activation of the devastating Fire of Hell. Balthazar reacts with a moment of surprise as the green flames close in. The Golden Knight is completely swallowed by a roar of emerald fire. Dantalion's subordinate praises his master's magic, but the king demands more results. Believing the enemy commander is dead, Dantalion's forces initiate a bold countercharge. Dantalion smugly believes the tide of battle has finally shifted in his favor. A flash of golden light streaks across the sky toward the charging army. The golden sword impales the leading demon commander through the torso with force. The demon commander collapses, dead before he can even finish his scream. Balthazar walks calmly through the cooling embers, unimpressed by the heat. The Golden Knight emerges from the smoke, his armor gleaming and unscathed. Gripping his hilt, Balthazar ridicules Dantalion for ever thinking they were equals. Standing before the gate, the elite knight declares Dantalion's complete and utter defeat. The horned man with glasses shouts that the enemy only survived because of their demonic armor. The Golden Knight claims the armor is a gift and mocks the man's weakness. The warrior decides it is time to end the confrontation now. A massive impact shakes the ground as the golden-clad knight narrowly evades. Balthazar wonders who has arrived after a voice expresses disappointment that he dodged. Sir von Devada appears with a cheerful smile, confirming her sudden arrival. A title card marks a new chapter in the unfolding conflict. Someone internally questions the unexpected presence of the Demon King of the 72nd floor. Looking down from the wall, Dantalian suspects Seer wants something in return for her help. Balthazar kneels before the girl, asking what brings her to this battlefield. Seer decides to handle the knight herself while Balthazar mocks her for being young. Balthazar secretly plots to conquer his way down to the 72nd floor. The knight believes his liege will be pleased by this unexpected turn of events. Red energy ripples through the silver-haired girl's hair as her power surges. Raising her finger, Seer activates a devastating spell with a simple command to ignite. A colossal flaming skull incinerates the area as Balthazar stares up in pure shock. Balthazar is horrified that the girl bypassed the incantation entirely to cast such magic. The knight realizes his demonic armor is melting from her overwhelming destructive power. Dismissing the magic as a mere trick, Balthazar attempts a desperate counterswing with his sword. Seer suddenly closes the distance, making Balthazar realize his resistance is futile. A blinding flash of light signals the end of the swift engagement. Standing over the defeated elite, Seer sighs at how anticlimactic the fight turned out. Dantalian is stunned, unable to track the girl's movements with his eyes. Commander Lin arrives and scolds the girl for charging in alone before identifying Balthazar. A blue-haired subordinate cheers for their majesty's success, only to be silenced by Lin. The blue-haired commander warns that a war with the 68th floor is now certain. The silver-haired girl is genuinely confused as to why a war would start. Seer suggests simply killing everyone present so that no witnesses remain. Lin explains that other groups have already noticed, prompting Seer to pivot her plan. The girl joyfully decides to frame Dantalian, claiming they were just helping him. Watching from above, Dantalian shudders as he feels a terrifying and chilling aura. Seer proposes killing everyone to get their stories straight as the soldiers watch in fear. The girl cites her teacher's lessons on ruthlessness, which Lin acknowledges she learned well. Smiling brightly, Seer orders her commander to handle the remaining enemy soldiers. Lin leads her troops into battle, vowing to annihilate the enemies as ordered. Dantalian naively expects a reward from Seer while secretly planning to betray her later. A dark purple energy begins to swirl around the silver-haired girl's head. Seer charges a massive orb of destructive magic above her head. Facing the castle gates, the girl prepares to unleash a spell to ruin the structure. A pillar of purple light obliterates the castle walls as the defenders scream in terror. Victims cry out in desperation, begging to be spared from the overwhelming destruction. A panicked Dantalian demands to know why Seer is suddenly attacking his forces. Seer retorts that she protected the castle and can now do whatever she wants. Dantalian tries to cast a spell, claiming he can handle magic of this caliber. A system window confirms a dispel spell as Dantalian's magic fails to activate. The Demon King realizes with dread that the girl has mastered dispelling magic. Seer offers Dantalian a choice between being buried with his castle or joining her. The girl clarifies that he will work under her in exchange for her protection. Observing the ruins, Dantalian is awestruck by the true power of the 72nd floor. Realizing the situation, the Demon King decides to secure a connection with Seer instead. Dantalian begs for mercy, promising to follow Seer's majesty. Seer cheerfully suggests they draft a peace treaty immediately. The scene transitions to the 69th floor Demon King's castle. Lin notes Seer defied Nahan, but Seer asserts her authority. Seer nervously wonders if her teacher is displeased with her. The doors fly open as Nahan calls out for Seer. The conference room occupants react in total shock to the intrusion. Nahan approaches with a grim expression as Seer tries to explain. Without a word, Nahan pulls the silver-haired girl into a hug. Nahan closes his eyes, expressing his profound relief at her safety. Tearfully, Seer looks up at her teacher with a shocked expression. A sincere apology hangs in the air against a soft background. Earlier, Nahan learns from his subordinate that Seer joined the fray. The teacher is stunned that his student ignored his safety instructions. Nahan rushes to the battlefield to check on Seer himself. Dark thoughts consume Nahan as he fears for his student's life. He dreads the possibility of Seer being injured in the conflict. Intense emotional turmoil manifests as a blur of light and shadow. Returning to the present, Nahan approaches the trembling silver-haired girl. Nahan holds her tightly, repeating how relieved he is she's safe. Seer stares at her teacher, her eyes welling with sudden tears. Nahan asks the other attendees to leave them alone for now. Dantalian protests the intrusion until Nahan silences him with a command. A terrifying, dark aura erupts from Nahan as his eyes glow. Dantalinian shudders in terror at Nahan's overwhelming and mysterious power. Once alone, Nahan gently asks Seer to explain the day's events. Nahan kneels beside Seer's chair, listening to her story with patience. Seer boasts of her victory over Balthazar and Crowley's capture. Nahan praises her success, but warns of the weight of responsibility. The teacher advises keeping her true power level hidden from enemies. Nahan reviews the peace treaty while considering their strategic next move. He outlines the plan to use the 69th floor as base. Nahan realizes Dantalian will serve as a manager without actual power. Commending her work, Nahan offers to grant her a personal wish. Siri reacts with pure joy when Nahan confirms their planned outing. Nahan shifts focus to the inevitable conflict with the 68th floor. The teacher asks about the total size of Decarabia's remaining forces. Dantalian reports a massive army of infantry, cavalry, and magic users. Seer is annoyed by Dantalian's informal way of speaking to Nahan. Dantalian calculates that 150,000 enemy troops remain after the battle. Nahan ponders a way to win without destroying the existing infrastructure. He concludes that significant damage is unavoidable in an all-out war. Nahan comforts a discouraged Seer, calling the situation a valuable lesson. Nahan contemplates using a specific method to fix their difficult situation. He downplays his idea when Seer asks for more specific details. Nahan decides he will simply take matters into his own hands. A title card marks the transition into a new narrative arc. Reports confirm the catastrophic losses suffered by the 68th floor's army. The star floor castle of the 68th Demon King stands grandly. Decarabia rages at his subordinates for their failure to conquer the floor. Subordinates prostrate themselves, begging for another chance against Dantalian. Decarabia demands Seer von Devada's head and threatens execution for failure. A short while later, Cruach admits his bravado was for survival. Cruach confesses he has no plan following Balthazar's humiliating defeat. A voice questions how Balthazar died despite wearing enchanted armor. Rubia argues she was occupied elsewhere while Balthazar met his end. Rubia explains her retreat was necessitated by Rin El Raza's arrival. Cruach agrees that retreating from such an opponent was wise. Cruach finds it surprising the young king built such a force. Cruach plans a pitched battle to leverage their superior numbers. Rubia suggests a preemptive strike is their best course of action. Cruach orders the remaining forces to prepare for an immediate assault. The commanders are startled by a sudden intrusion into the room. A panicked soldier reports that the enemy has launched an attack. Nahan and Commander Lin survey the canyon, noting the absence of ambushes. Lin is shocked when Nahan admits he is unsure of the outcome. Lin reminds Nahan that he usually operates with absolute calculation. Nahan takes personal responsibility for failing to predict Seer's intentions. Nahan justifies the risky move as the fastest way to save lives. Nahan orders Commander Lin to wait behind with the army. Rejecting help, Nahan prepares to face the enemy with limited backup. Nahan decides to bring the two humans along for support. Nahan explains he is testing the humans' loyalty and growth today. The teacher encourages the duo to prove their worth in battle. The silver-haired man worries if he can truly succeed this time. He feels anxious, uncertain of his body's true limits and power. Nahan smiles, knowing there is no room for a second chance. Lily detects a massive enemy force waiting further down the path. An enormous army is seen occupying the valley floor below. Nahan orders the pair to provide backup when he signals. Enemy scouts report the arrival of opponents beyond the valley. Cruach is baffled to see a single person walking toward them. Fearing a trap, the commanders decide to wait for more intel. Rubia mocks the others, suggesting the enemy has already fled. Cruach maintains caution, unable to sense any mana from the ridge. Rubia ridicules her fellow commanders, calling them cowards for being hesitant. Rubia takes flight, ignoring Cruach's orders to stay and wait. The men hope Rubia's defensive magic will protect her rash soul. Rubia swoops down, mocking the flightless enemies for their slow tactics. The Harpy believes the enemy should have faced them head-on. Rubia dives for the kill, boasting of the Harpy's terrifying power. Nahan smirks and quietly commands his magic to pierce the sky. A massive stone spike erupts, impaling Rubia instantly mid-air. Shocked and bleeding, Rubia realizes her life is fading away. The winged commander collapses to the ground, dead upon impact. Cruach screams out in horror as he witnesses Rubia's sudden demise. Horrified, the enemy commanders demand to know Nahan's true identity. Cloaked in dark energy, Nahan mocks their chatter on the battlefield. A terrifying red eye glares with murderous intent from the shadows. A colossal beast emerges behind Nahan, leaving the commanders utterly paralyzed. Nahan smiles coldly, ordering his subordinates to clean up the battlefield. Nahan reflects on how various factors influence war, yet one element can overturn everything. A massive, glowing red eye opens as a hidden factor reveals itself. An enormous, whale-like beast looms over the valley, dwarfing the terrified soldiers. Nahan watches with a smirk as his summoned creature terrifies the enemy. The gargantuan white beast opens its massive maw, preparing to descend. The impact of the monster's arrival sends cavalry and debris flying everywhere. A soldier screams in despair as the earth literally shatters around him. Desperate cries for help echo as the valley becomes a graveyard. The colossal beast slams into the ground, unleashing an earth-shattering roar. Cruach trembles in terror, admitting he has never seen such overwhelming power. Cursing Nahan, the desperate commander flees the carnage on horseback. Nahan smiles cryptically when questioned about his identity, offering no clear answer. Eri asks Dane if they truly need to intervene in the slaughter. Dane insists they must prove their worth, and Eri agrees to provide backup. "I'm counting on you," Dane says as he leaps into the fray. Eri channels her mana, casting a spell to grant Dane the wind speed. Dane accelerates into a blur of motion, charging toward the remaining enemies. Leaping through the air, Dane prepares to strike down a group of soldiers. Eri activates her magical artifact, providing further support to Dane's rapid assault. A massive flash of energy signals a successful hit against the enemy. A fishman commander orders a charge, thinking the human is already defeated. Dane kneels on the shattered earth, catching his breath after the explosion. Glowing with determination, Dane lunges forward to continue the high-speed battle. Lord Dahak is slain as Dane's blade finds its mark during the charge. A demonic subordinate rages at the human's interference, transforming into a green dragon. Nahen suddenly intervenes, telling the beast not to look away before striking it. Nahen smiles, promising to send Dekarabia to join the fallen commander soon. Eri laughs breathlessly, surprised that their reckless gamble actually paid off. Sira suddenly appears, demanding to know where her teacher is. Sira notes that she never knew Nahen could make such expressions. Seer proudly accepts her status as a great demon king with a smile. Eri asks if Nahen knows about Seer's secret visit to the front lines. Seer questions why Eri is meddling, causing the human to apologize immediately. Seer demands to know if Eri harbors any strange romantic feelings for Nahen. Groveling, Eri clarifies she is only terrified of the powerful Lord Nahen. Seer and Nahen finally spot each other across the devastated battlefield. Eri welcomes Dane back as he credits her for their survival. Nahen asks Siri why she came to find him in the middle of a war. Nahen smiles, thinking he should let Seer get more real combat experience. Nahen pats Siri's head, tasking her and Rin with finishing the conquest. Nahen commends the two humans for their dedicated 5 years of training. Eri and Dane bow respectfully as Nahen promises them a new mission. Nahen turns his attention toward finding a specific item in the castle. Dekarabia coughs up blood, broken and defeated on his own throne room floor. Seer mocks the Demon King, claiming he was never truly a threat. Seer and Lin stand over the fallen Demon King in his ruined castle. Lin wonders how Nahen mastered magic that should have been long lost. A narrative note states that everything was supposed to be lost long ago. Lin stops Seer's blade, reminding her that Nahen ordered Dekarabia kept alive. Seer clenches her fist tightly as she prepares to strike. The broken Dekarabia trembles in fear, asking Seer what she is planning. Nahen acknowledges Commander Lin while preparing to settle the situation personally. Seer smiles mischievously, confirming she only needs to keep him alive. Repeated thuds and cries of agony echo through the castle room. Lin warns the young majesty that her excessive violence will be fatal. Dekarabia is a swollen, bloody mess, weakly pleading for his death. Seer is shocked by the extreme fragility of the enemy king. Panicking, Seer suggests blaming Commander Lin to avoid her teacher's disappointment. The two women stand awkwardly over the unconscious, bloody Demon King. Seer begs for a cover-up, and Lin reluctantly agrees to help. Nahen's sudden arrival causes the group to gasp in visible shock. Nahen immediately senses their suspicious behavior as they attempt to look innocent. A blood-stained arm rests limply on the floor, catching Nahen's attention. Nahen demands absolute honesty, warning that lying will not be tolerated. Yielding to the pressure, Seer bows her head and apologizes immediately. Nahen kneels beside the prisoner, Noting he is a total mess, the defeated king remains in absolute despair, begging for his death. Lin questions sparing Decarabia, but Nahan clarifies he only needs essential information. Nahen asks Seer if she is familiar with the floor's nebula stones. Nahen explains he will cross-reference testimonies to find the hidden stone mine. Nahen admits his powers surprised him when he killed the resisting members. Seer questions how he will make a demon king talk without brainwashing. A mysterious pair of high-heeled feet walk calmly down the hallway. Citri makes a grand entrance, mocking Decarabia's pathetic and bloodied state. The group watches in silence as Citri arrives to begin her work. Seer glares with intense, glowing eyes at the prisoner before her. Citri feels the weight of the girl's murderous and unblinking gaze. Nahan orders Lin to take Seer outside while Citri starts her interrogation. While leaving, Seer asks how Citri intends to find the hidden stones. Nahan cryptically tells Seer her assumptions are both right and wrong. Citri leans close to Decarabia, demanding the location of the nebula mine. Citri uses a hypnotic, purple-hued gaze to compel the prisoner into talking. A powerful, magical aura erupts as Citri exerts her full influence. The extraction of secrets continues as the king begins to break. Citri mockingly thanks the king before offering a burning heart as reward. Completely bewitched and broken, Decarabia professes his love as he fades.